Chapter 99. In front of the castle's main building, Dongbo Lai and his wife stared at a group of people walking over. "Brother, what do you think father and mother will do? Will they let the Mo Yang clan off so easily?" Qing Shi, who was standing at the side, asked quietly. "Since we promised father and mother to let them handle it, we don't need to worry about it." As Shuang looked on, he suddenly frowned. The silver-robed woman, Mo Yang Qi, was walking at the very front. Behind her was a group of clan elders, and there was a gray-robed man. He was none other than his uncle, Mo Yang Chen, whom he had met when he was young. Mo Yang Qi, lead the elders here to apologize to Marquis Dongbo and his wife. Mo Yang Qi knelt down without hesitation. Hua! The group of elders behind her knelt down as well. This scene caused Dongbo Ying's eyelids to twitch. "No." Mo Yang Yu's expression changed. She immediately rushed over to help her brother, Mo Yang Chen, get up, get up. Dongbo Lai also went over to help them up. "Our Mo Yang clan indeed owes you and your wife." Mo Yang Qi did not get up. The elders behind her were still kneeling. No matter how Mo Yang Yu and Dongbo Lai tried to pull them up, they remained kneeling. "Humph!" Followed by a cold snort. A surge of transcendent Do Qi formed a fan shape and appeared out of nowhere. It swept across Mo Yang Qi and the group of elders. However, it avoided Dongbo Lai and his wife. Peng Mo Yang Qi and the group of elders were all sent flying. Some fell on the ground, some hit the wall, and the weaker ones vomited blood on the spot. Mo Yang Qi and the group of elders' expressions changed. They looked at the cold-faced Dongbo Shuang in fear. "Apologize? Kneel?" Dongbo Shuang sneered, "What's the point of doing this? This is the dossier." Mo Yang Qi reacted quickly. With a flip of her hand, she picked up a dossier and stood up. She respectfully presented it to Mo Yang Yu. "Wife Marquis, please take a look." "Dossier?" Mo Yang Yu looked at Mo Yang Qi with a complicated expression. This was the clan leader, the high and mighty clan leader of the past. Actually, Dongbo Lai, Dongbo Shuang and the rest were all disgusted with the Mo Yang clan, but Mo Yang Yu was the most conflicted. He flipped open the dossier and read it carefully. "Humph, what a 1,000-year-old family." When Mo Yang Yu saw this, her complexion turned ugly. All the branches and bloodlines are competing so ruthlessly. So there are so many reasons why my father died so early. 5,869 people, execute them. More than 20,000 people were convicted of serious crimes. Mo Yang Yu flipped to the end and was somewhat shocked. What? Dongbo couldn't believe it. 5,000 people were executed and 20,000 people were convicted? Qing Shi was shocked. Even Dongbo Shuang was shocked. This was too ruthless. This was because the entire Mo Yang clan, including the guards and servants, only had about 100,000 people. As for those who could be convicted, if they were servants or guards, they would be relatively close to the master. The large-scale guards of the clan usually wouldn't get involved. Excluding the large-scale guards, the entire clan only had about 50 to 60,000 people. Killing 30,000 people? So ruthless. Actually, this kind of internal strife within a large clan was very common. Once it was discovered, it would implicate many people. This time, the Mo Yang clan wanted to quench Dongbo Ying's anger and also wanted to use this opportunity to reorganize the clan. They wanted to get rid of many malignant tumors. In the past, even the clan leader wouldn't act so recklessly. But this time, the clan leader was holding the banner of quenching the anger of transcendence, so naturally, he would cut the Gordian knot. Of the 5,800 people who were killed, over 3,000 had no relationship with Mo Yang Yu, or it could be said that their relationship was very shallow. The 20,000 people who were convicted were all thugs and guards. They were all subordinates who had been purged and were directly sentenced to hard labor. Here is 10 million gold notes. Mo Yang Qi then took out a thick stack of gold notes. Every single one of them was worth 100,000 gold coins, a total of 100 of them. To actually be able to take out so much. Dongbua Shuang was also surprised. Xiang Pang Yun had left behind 8 million gold coins. Although the Xi clan might have a little more, their assets were not much. After all, the founder of the Mo Yang clan was a transcendent, a true transcendent. Therefore, the Mo Yang clan's foundation was very deep. But after 1,000 years, many of the family assets were fixed assets, such as gold refining workshops, territories, large castles, shops, and so on. To take out 10 million gold notes was also very difficult. Actually, this time, the Mo Yang clan had killed many malignant tumors and seized their assets. Many of them were directly mortgaged to the empire's banks to obtain many gold notes. Then, from the clan's treasury, they were able to gather 10 million gold coins. This was almost a third of the Mo Yang clan's assets. Moreover, the clan's elders have unanimously agreed to appoint Mo Yang Chen as the new clan leader. Mo Yang Chi said. Brother? Mo Yang Yu was somewhat stunned. The corner of Dongbua Shuiying's mouth slightly curled upwards. Truly ruthless. Allowing his own uncle to become the clan leader, killing or convicting 30,000 members of the clan, and giving him 10 million gold coins. His mother and uncle were biological siblings after all, and their relationship was very deep. In the blink of an eye, it was time for Dongbua Shuiying to leave. Early morning. In the training grounds, Dongbua Shuiying was training his fists. The spear was an extension of his fists. Dongbua Shuiying loved to train his spear arts, but at the same time, he also loved to train his fists. His body was as perfect as one. His strength circulated within his body, and every move he made was either retracted or released. Who? Dongbua Shuiying stopped and let out a long breath. The surrounding air trembled for a moment before returning to normal. Snow Eagle, come, drink some tea and eat some snacks. Seeing that Dongbua Shuiying had stopped, Mo Yang Yu called out. N. Dongbua Shuiying smiled as he walked over and drank the tea in one gulp. After that, he picked up the snacks and started eating. Mother, the snacks you make are still the best. After so many years, I haven't eaten such delicious snacks since I was 8 years old. There are so many good chefs in the castle, but none of them can cook better than me. Mo Yang Yu laughed. I'm not lying, there really isn't. Dongbua Shuiying quickly finished the large plate of snacks. This month was too comfortable. Ever since he was 8 years old, he had been training his spear arts with all his might. After that, he fell into the Black Wind Abyss and stayed there alone for 6 years. The past month was like a dream to him. You're leaving in the afternoon? Mo Yang Yu suddenly asked. Yes, I'm leaving in the afternoon. Dongbua Shuiying laughed. If this goes on, I'm afraid I'll become a hedonistic young master. Hedonistic young master will be hedonistic young master. Mo Yang Yu was reluctant to part with her son. I still want to walk further on the path of transcendence. Dongbua Shuiying laughed as he reminisced about the past. When I was young, I loved to read the biographies of transcendents. Looking at those transcendents, I would even dream of flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground, drinking with the gods and catching a few demons to play with. Now that I've stepped on this path, of course I have to work hard to walk further. This path is quite interesting. If it was said that in the past 20 years, he didn't dare to slack off because he wanted to save his parents. But now, it was because of his heart's desire. Furthermore, there was another reason that he didn't say. When he saw the Xi clan and the other clans bowing their heads, when he saw the Mo Yang clan kneeling down, Dongbua Shuiying swore that he would definitely not let his family fall to such a state. Big brother Chang Feng and the others all have high hopes for me. I'm the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years. If I continue to decline like this, I'm afraid I'll become the biggest joke in the eyes of all the transcendents in Dragon Mountain Empire. Dongbua Shuiying laughed. That afternoon. After lunch, Qingshi, Dongbua Lai couple, Zhong Ling and Tong San stood at the entrance of the castle to send Dongbua Shuiying off. There's no need to send me off. If there's anything, you can contact me through the communication wristband. Dongbua Shuiying smiled. That's all, I'll be leaving now. Brother, I'll definitely become a transcendent too. Qing Shi suddenly shouted. Dongbua Shuang was stunned. Zhong Ling, Tong San, and Dongbua Lai couple all laughed. Good, you're ambitious. Dongbua Shuang also laughed. Qing Shi, I'll be waiting for you. Qing Shi nodded. Who? Following that, Dongbua Shuiying's body was bathed in the light of the flames. He looked at his family members and grinned. Then, he soared into the sky and flew towards the north, disappearing into the horizon. End of this chapter. Chapter 100. Surrounded by flames, Dongbua Shuang flew towards the north at high speed. At the same time, he looked down at the scenery below. The further north he flew, the lower the temperature became. The number of cities and villages on the ground also became fewer and fewer. A piece of pure white. The vast northern snow plains appeared in his field of vision. The 5 northern provinces were all connected to the snow plains. The northern snow plains was extremely vast, spanning hundreds of thousands of li. There were no traces of humans here, but there were some unique beasts living in the snow plains. Rumble, a group of gigantic beasts the size of a small mountain, was galloping. Snow plains white mammoths. Dongbua Shuang flew in the sky and looked down. The group of gigantic beasts were at least 10 meters tall. Their forehooves were extremely thick and their fur was thick and long. Even if the Silver Moon Knights attacked with all their might, it would be hard for them to pierce through this thick layer of fur. Not to mention the thick layer of fat beneath the fur. It was almost impossible for a Silver Moon Knight to kill a Snow Plains white mammoth. And they loved to live in groups. When a large group of Snow Plains white mammoths galloped, even a legend knight would not dare to face them head-on. The human army would be easily crushed. These Snow Plains white mammoths are quite docile. Dongbua Shuang smiled as he looked at them. Because they were docile, they were easily tamed. Some of the cruel beasts in the Great Snow Plains had already been killed by the humans. As he flew, the further north he went, the colder the wind became, like knives. Water Taoist faction. Dongbua Shuiying's eyes lit up. After flying for 120,000 li, he finally reached his destination. The Great Snow Plains also had a chain of tall mountains. On one of the mountains that stretched for thousands of li, there was a Taoist faction. South, Dongbua Shuang turned into a ray of light and descended from the sky, landing at the entrance of the Taoist faction. Protector Dongbua. A deep voice sounded. Dongbua was slightly startled. The entire Taoist temple was made of dark gray metal. There were meandering carvings on the walls of the Taoist temple. On the left side of the Taoist temple, there was a strange bird carving, and on the right side, there was a giant dragon carving. At that moment, the dragon carving on the right side was speaking, and its mouth was still moving. Ah! Dongbua Shuang was also startled. This was obviously not an alchemy creature, it was just a pattern. Protector Dongbo, a ray of light flew out from the Taoist temple and appeared at the entrance of the Taoist temple. It was a handsome man with a divine sword on his back. Our entire Water Taoist temple is an assembly-type semi-divine artifact. As for Senior Dragon and Senior Sparrow, they are both artifact spirits that have existed since the establishment of this Taoist temple. Greetings Senior Dragon, Senior Sparrow. Dongbua Shuang bowed respectfully. At the same time, he was secretly surprised. According to what he knew, under normal circumstances, only divine artifacts would have artifact spirits. Demigod artifacts almost never had an artifact spirit. As for the importance of divine artifacts to the Xia people, it was even more important than the birth of a deity. That was because those deities who had just broken through did not know how to refine divine artifacts. The divine artifacts that the Xia people currently possessed were all passed down from the deity world or the dark abyss. Brat, train properly. I have made a bet with the old dragon that you will become a saint within 50 years, Senior Sparrow said. Don't give the youngsters any pressure. As long as you can break through within 100 years, it would already be an amazing feat, Senior Dragon added. Seniors, I still need to guide Protector Dongbua. I will not disturb you any further, the handsome man said. He then brought Dongbua Shuaing into the Daoist temple. The inside of the Daoist temple was rather peaceful. The mountain path was winding, and the ground was covered with snow. Occasionally, there would be small courtyards on both sides of the Daoist temple. Whenever they saw Dongbua Shuaing, they would respectfully bow. My name is Gong Liang Yuan, and I have just become a saint. The handsome man smiled. This Daoist temple is a quiet place for training. At most, there are only legend rankers here. Normally, there would be hundreds of legend rankers training here. Normally, only when they feel that they cannot improve any further would they return home. As for transcendence, most saints and demigods would stay in the Daoist temple to train. As for sky realm transcendence, there are very few of them in the Daoist temple. They are either in the infernal realm or the mortal world. Before the age of 500, most transcendents would be very attached to the mortal world. However, as time passes, they would rarely move about in the mortal world. Gong Liang Yuan said. This is your first time coming to the Daoist temple. To you, the most important thing is to choose a Do Chi technique and secret technique. Also, there are transcendent weapons and origin stones. Entering the secluded Daoist temple, Dongbua Shuaing was led by Gong Liang Yuan to collect the 600 kilograms of origin stones. Following which, he went to choose a Do Chi technique. Brother Dongbua, for normal transcendence, regardless of origin stones, techniques, secret techniques, weapons etc., they all require transcendent contribution points to exchange for them. Gong Liang Yuan exclaimed. Thinking back then, I would risk my life to accept transcendent missions. Sometimes, I would even risk my life to obtain transcendent contribution points. After which, I would have to count on my fingers to exchange for techniques and secret techniques. Compared to other transcendents, Brother Dongbua, you indeed have a lot of resources. I am ashamed. Dongbua Shuaing said. There is nothing to be ashamed of. These resources were actually obtained by saints and even demigods risking their lives to obtain them. It is impossible for every ordinary transcendent to obtain a pile of resources. To obtain them, you can only exchange them with your own contribution points. Only an extremely small number of absolute geniuses like you, Brother Dongbo, would be able to directly obtain resources to groom them. Gong Liang Yuan said. Dongbua Shuaing was very clear. Origin stones had to be obtained from the transcendent world. And to risk one's life in the transcendent world, one had to at least have the strength of a saint. Saints could only obtain large amounts of origin stones by risking their lives. Do Chi Pavilion. It was a very ordinary wooden pavilion with 3 floors. Dongbua Shuaing went in to look for a suitable Do Chi technique for himself. Do Chi techniques were very important. Because with them, one would be able to increase one's cultivation speed, allowing one's Do Chi to reach godhood. But it was not important. Every transcendent would choose the best Do Chi technique. Under the circumstances where transcendent contribution points were scarce, they would rather exchange for it step by step. First, he would exchange for the Sky Tier technique. Then, he would exchange for the Saint Tier technique after he reached Saint Tier. There are only 2 types of God Tier Flame Do Chi, Starfire Do Chi and Fire Dragon Do Chi. Dongbua Shuaing flipped through and pondered. He could choose any Do Chi technique regardless of the price. Which one should I choose? Fire Dragon Do Chi is more ferocious. Starfire Do Chi is more balanced. Dongbua Shuaing thought for a while and made his decision, I will choose Starfire Do Chi. Choosing a Do Chi technique was relatively simple. After all, techniques were meant to be cultivated. As for combat, it depended on one's technique, experience, level, weapon, secret techniques, etc. Technique, experience, and level were all internal and needed to be slowly accumulated. But weapons and secret techniques could be chosen. The reason why there were so many transcendents joining the Temple of the Earth God and Bloodshed Tavern was because they had God-tier secret techniques. Brother Dongbua, you have to think carefully before choosing a weapon and secret technique. Gong Liang Yuan said, you can only choose one secret technique. In the future, the other secret techniques will have to be exchanged for with transcendent contribution points. So, you have to think carefully. Otherwise, it would be too late for regrets. I know. Dongbua Shuang was also very cautious. Should we choose a weapon or a secret technique first? Gong Liang Yuan asked. Let's choose a weapon first. It's easier to choose a weapon than a secret technique. After all, secret techniques are the most important. Dongbua Shuang said. In terms of external factors, secret techniques had the greatest impact on one's strength. It was even more important than a weapon. A god-tier secret technique and an ordinary secret technique would cause two transcendents who were on the same level in other aspects to have a difference in strength of 10 times. They could be killed in a single move. From this, one could see how precious secret techniques were. Even if Dongbua Shuang couldn't obtain a god-tier secret technique, he still wanted to choose one that was close to it. This way, the gap between him and the Temple of the Earth God, Bloodshed Tavern, and demonic faction would be as small as possible. Of course, secret techniques also needed to be studied. If one obtained a god-tier secret technique, they would only be at the entry level. For a weaker secret technique, others would have already cultivated it to an unimaginable level, completely suppressing those who cultivated a god-tier secret technique. But for the same person, the stronger the secret technique, the better. Returning to his hometown, the update was a bit late. Chapter 101. Inside the Water Daoist Faction. Shuang and Gong Liang Yuan walked side by side until they arrived outside a large pavilion. Outside the pavilion was a lake, and by the side of the lake, there was a bald-headed, wizened old man fishing. This old man emitted an ancient aura. This is Vice Faction Head Chao Qing. Gong Liang Yuan's expression changed and immediately transmitted, I was preparing to wait for you to choose your weapon and secret technique before meeting the Vice Faction Head. I didn't expect to meet him here. The Vice Faction Head is already 2,860 years old, and is very close to the end of his lifespan. It's him. Dongbua Shuang was filled with respect. Demigod ranking number 9, Chao Qing, Water Daoist Faction's Vice Faction Head. Grasps the Thunder God's true meaning. A demigod's lifespan is only 3,000 years, and the limit represents the limit. Under normal circumstances, they would not be able to live to that limit. Mortals usually have a lifespan of 100 years, but in reality, living to 80 or 90 years is already not bad. For example, a star realm's lifespan is 200 years, but normally, living to 180 years is already very impressive. Transcendents are slightly more powerful, and can reach the limit. Elder Leijin treated the stone of Oceanic World's spiritual liquid as if it was food and water, constantly nourishing his soul and body, allowing him to live to 1,500 years old. Without the stone of Oceanic World's spiritual liquid, his lifespan would be shortened by 100 years. A demigod would normally be able to live to 2,900 years old, and if they were heavily injured in a battle, they might die even earlier. Thus, Vice Faction Head Chao Qing could die at any moment. Vice Faction Head Gong Liang Yuan said respectfully, this is Dongbua Shuang. Greetings, Vice Faction Head. Dongbua Shuang also bowed respectfully. Only then did the bald, skinny old man turn his head. His eyes looked turbid, and the skin on his face was full of wrinkles. His body was already very old, but no one in the world dared to look down on him. After all, this old man had not fought for too long, and no one knew his true strength. The demigod ranking number 9 was determined based on his last battle. All right. The bald, skinny old man smiled and nodded. This old man is able to see another monstrous genius from our Water Daoist faction before the end of my lifespan. I'm really happy. I still remember that when I was a legend ranker, I was also full of mettle. When I joined the Water Daoist faction, it was Big Brother Zhang Chen who led me there. But in the blink of an eye, Big Brother Zhang Chen has already been dead for more than 2,000 years. Life and death. This old man has seen too many deaths. The bald, skinny old man chuckled. There aren't many who can live longer than me. Dongbua Shuang and Gong Liang Yuan listened obediently. To the 28-year-old Dongbua Shuang, a demigod who had lived for close to 3,000 years was practically a living piece of history. Dongbua Shuang. The bald old man suddenly said. This junior is here. Dongbua Shuang replied respectfully. You are a newly advanced transcendent. You will definitely have to make a trip to the infernal world. The bald, skinny old man continued, Sky Realm transcendents will experience the cruelty of transcendents fighting in the infernal world. Many transcendents will die there. To a monstrous genius like you, you have to be careful when you are still weak. Don't die in the infernal world at such a young age. This junior understands. Dongbua Shuang said gratefully. He was very clear about it. Because Sky Realm transcendents were forbidden from entering other transcendent worlds to adventure. In the mortal world, they would not meet with any danger. Most of the danger would be in the infernal world. For the sake of training, for the sake of life and death experiences, Sky Realm transcendents would often die. It wasn't that the transcendents were courting death. Rather, the effects of life and death experiences were good. For example, when Dongbua Shuang fought with the Shadow Leopard, he immediately broke through to the realm of power as one. On the path of transcendence, cultivation was even harder. If one did not go through life and death experiences, it would be hard to walk far. Cultivating for 10 years through life and death experiences was much better than cultivating for 100 years. The moment one enters the infernal world, there will be a transcendent battle of life and death specially prepared for new transcendents. This is something only new transcendents can participate in. The bald, skinny old man smiled. This battle of life and death is watched by many Xia people experts, so it is relatively safe. Ever since the establishment of the infernal world, the transcendent battle of life and death has been held for countless years. The most powerful person in history was a demigod from 19 million years ago, Purgatory Knight Jiali. When he first became a transcendent, he had passed through a total of 11 battles. In the recent 10,000 years, the most powerful person was a girl called Dan Qingyan. She had passed through 9 battles. Unfortunately, after she became a saint, she entered the transcendent world to adventure and died. Back then, I had also passed through 6 battles. The bald, skinny old man looked at Dongbua Shuang. Dongbua Shuang, you have to win some glory for our Water Daoist faction. Go through 9 battles, 10 battles. Dongbua Shuang muttered to himself. The vice faction head's requirements were really high. 9 battles, 10 battles. After reading Elder Leizhen's memoirs, Dongbua Shuang was very clear about the transcendent battle of life and death. This was something only new transcendents could enjoy. In order to let new transcendents have a detailed understanding of the battle, they would arrange for opponents to battle in a fixed area. Most of the opponents would be natives of the transcendent world. During the battle, there would be many experts watching, and there would also be demigods. Therefore, if there was any danger during the battle of life and death, the demigods would immediately lend a helping hand. Therefore, it was relatively safe, and a rare opportunity to familiarize with the natives of the transcendent world. However, after all, the transcendent battle of life and death was too fast. Sometimes, if a demigod was a step slower, they might not be able to help in time. On average, an unlucky transcendent would die in the transcendent battle of life and death every 200 to 300 years. For example, Elder Leizhen had only passed through 5 battles. How many battles did Elder Chang Feng pass? Dongbua Shuang asked curiously. Qi Qiu Bai. He also passed through 6 battles. The bald, skinny old man laughed. When Qi Qiu Bai was at the Sky Realm, he wasn't too dazzling. Although he had become a transcendent at a young age, he had only grasped the profound mystery of Wind of Myriad Existences, a very ordinary profound mystery. Furthermore, he rose to prominence later on, and actually grasped the heaven-defying, true meaning of space cleavage. The transcendent battle of life and death can also show one's potential. Those who have passed through the battle of life and death, as long as they are alive, most of them would have high achievements. The bald, skinny old man said, however, those who have passed the battle of life and death, although most of them are not good, there would occasionally be those who rose to prominence later on. For example, the current number 1 mountain lord he, back then, only managed to pass through 3 battles. Don't learn from mountain lord he. Mountain lord he is a mage, and he likes to immerse himself in research. Furthermore, the transcendent battle of life and death is the only safe chance for you to familiarize yourself with the natives of the transcendent world. You must grasp this opportunity well. The bald, skinny old man said, if you miss it, there won't be any more. Dongbua Shuang nodded, Junior understands. Go, choose your weapon. There's no need to accompany this old man. The bald, skinny old man said, oh right, I can see that you should have awakened your primordial bloodline. When you are going to choose your secret technique, you can go to the innermost bookshelf on the 3rd floor of the Secret Techniques Pavilion and carefully flip through it. Dongbua Shui Ying's eyes lit up. Secret Techniques Pavilion, 3rd floor. The innermost bookshelf? Thank you, Vice Head. Dongbua Shuang respectfully said. The bald, skinny old man continued to squint his eyes, seemingly closing them but not closing them at the same time. Dongbua Shuang and Gong Yuan respectfully bowed and left. Brother Dongbo, the vice faction head really thinks highly of you. Gong Liang Yuan laughed in a low voice, actually, we were discussing about you previously. We even placed a bet on how many rounds you could pass in the transcendent battle of life and death. We all felt that you could pass at least 6 rounds. I'm not confident myself. Dongbua Shuang casually replied. In his heart, he was worried about the 3rd floor of the Secret Techniques Pavilion that the vice head mentioned. What exactly was the vice head talking about? Chapter 102. The two of them walked to the front of the weapon pavilion. Go in and choose, I'll wait for you here. Gong Liang Yuan stood outside the door. All right. Dongbua Shuang walked in. Just like the Dochi pavilion from before, this huge pavilion that contained all the weapons had no guards. The reason why there was no guard was because the entire Water Daoist temple was a demigod weapon. The weapon spirits, Senior Dragon and Senior Sparrow, could completely control this place. No one would be able to sneak away or forcefully take away the weapons. Weapons are an extension of one's limbs. They are the most important companions in battle. Dongbua Shuang was very clear that a good weapon and a bad weapon would have a huge impact on one's strength. Dongbua Shuang walked briskly. Very quickly, he arrived at the area where the spears were placed. Lightning Rush Spear, Mortal Low Grade, 500 Origin Stones to exchange. Dongbua Shuang looked at the green spear that was stabbed into the ground. There was a metal plate on the ground with a simple introduction. He casually picked it up and played with it. Hu Chi. With a swing of the spear, it slashed through the air. Following that, he stabbed with one hand. The spear spun and tore through the air, but it was unable to damage the ordinary-looking building. Mortal Low Grade, it's the worst type of transcendent weapon. I feel that it's not even as perfect as my Feishua God Spear in terms of power transfer. It's just that it's made of transcendent materials, it's so lousy. Dongbua Shuang secretly shook his head. This was probably the work of a transcendent who failed while trying to refine a weapon. Transcendent weapons were not necessarily better than mortal weapons. Even a peak grade 3 alchemist weapon would cost more than 1,000,000 gold coins. In terms of price, it was not any less than a mortal low grade transcendent weapon. To mortals, it was far more practical. Even a newly advanced transcendent would not bother with a mortal low-grade weapon. This was a failed attempt. Most of them would get a mortal high-grade weapon. Being able to get a mortal high-grade weapon was already very extravagant. As he walked, he picked up a spear and experimented. And the power transfer is perfect, just that the spear shaft is slightly soft. Dongbua Shuiying's current physical strength had reached the middle phase of the sky rank, and the Feishua God Spear was also slightly soft to him. This spear, TSK, it's a bit too long. It's not very suitable. Dongbua Shuang had been practicing spear arts for more than 20 years. If it was said that some women loved jewelry, then he would also be very excited when he held a spear. He could feel the uniqueness of each spear. For so many years, he had never tried so many good spears to his heart's content. For a full hour, he mainly checked the human tier top-grade spears. Mortal tier long spears usually cost between 5 to 10 kilograms of origin stones. The Water Daoist faction allowed me to pick any weapon or treasure that didn't exceed 80 kilograms of origin stones. That should be enough for me to gather a full set of mortal tier top-tier treasures. Dongbua Shuang muttered to himself. Clothes, armor, boots, weapons, storage bracelets, etc. A full set of mortal tier top quality equipment would cost 80 kilograms of origin stones. However, if I'm going to make one, I'll make one of the better ones. Dongbua Ying's gaze landed on the Saint-tier weapons. Saint-tier low-grade weapons were usually priced around 50 kilograms of origin stones. Although the price had skyrocketed, there was still a qualitative difference between a mortal tier transcendent weapon and a Saint-tier transcendent weapon. Mortal tier top-quality weapons and Saint-tier low-grade weapons, the difference in strength could be 30 to 40%. For a new transcendent like me, a Saint-tier low-grade weapon is more than enough. Dongbua Shuang made his decision. He already had a bracelet of holding. The inner armor was a Saint-tier top-quality inner armor left behind by Elder Lei Zhen. After all, he had grasped the profound mystery of the water of myriad creations. Therefore, as for clothes, since he already had a good inner armor, any mortal tier top-quality clothes would suffice. As for the spear and boots, Dongbua Shuang felt that he should choose a good one. A moment later, a spear was picked by Dongbua Shuang. Boom! It was a black spear. The body of the spear seemed to be made out of a special type of transcendent wood. There were even dark red patterns on the wood. If one were to sense it carefully, one would be able to hear the faint roar of a dragon. A casual swing of the spear would produce a thunderous sound. Black dragon spear, dragon blood watering. Dongbua Shuang grinned. This spear weighs around 600 kilograms. It is more suitable for my spear arts. Some spears looked blurry to the naked eye. When used, they were like phantoms. Some spears were suitable for thrusting with extreme speed. Dongbua Shuang had been tempted by other spears before. But now that he had grasped the profound mystery of the water and fire of myriad creations, he faintly felt that his path was the path of yin and yang. Going to the extremes might produce a miraculous effect when facing an opponent of the same level. But when facing an extremely powerful enemy, going to the extremes would mean that one's other aspects would be lacking. If one couldn't kill the enemy, it would be easy for the enemy to kill him. The name is indeed evil and domineering. However, this spear is indeed very good. Dongbua Shuang casually swung the spear, and the spear shaft spun and stabbed out. The resulting shockwave slammed into the walls of the pavilion. Ripples appeared on the surface of the walls, easily dissipating the impact. After all, those who came to choose a weapon would usually give it a try. But it costs 60 kilograms of origin stones? Dongbua Shuang looked at the price tag. This Saint-tier low-grade spear had already exceeded the free price that the Water Daoist faction had set for him. Let's choose another pair of boots. Dongbua Shuang placed great importance on boots. Some transcendents might use leg techniques during battle, but Dongbua Shuang placed great importance on flexibility. In close combat, flexibility was extremely important. Those with low flexibility would be forced into a passive position. As for those with high flexibility, they would be able to toy with their opponents in the palm of their hands. Even if they encountered an enemy, they would have a higher chance of escaping. I'll choose this. The dark blue leather boots were made from the skin of a transcendent beast and some metals. There were very dark inscriptions on the boots, and the power of the wind could not be seen unless one looked closely. Fluttering boots. Dongbua Shuang put on the boots and tried them out. A formless flow of energy could be felt in the surroundings. The high-speed air flow generated by his footsteps would be guided, greatly reducing the air resistance. For transcendence, their movements were extremely fast, and the air resistance generated by their every movement was very shocking. For example, the high-pressure waves generated by a casual thrust of a spear or a whip were actually air resistance. When the air resistance was reduced, the speed and agility would naturally increase. Awesome! Dongbua Shuang revealed a joyful expression. After choosing the Saint-tier low-grade Black Dragon Spear and the Fluttering Boots, Dongbua Shuang chose a Mortal-tier Black Robe, which also had the effect of reducing air resistance. After all, in terms of defense, the Saint-tier inner armor was too powerful. Good, I have enough. Dongbua Shuang revealed a joyful expression. Senior Dragon, Senior Sparrow, I have already chosen these three. Dongbua Shuang said. Brat, the Water Daoist faction can only give you 80 kilograms of origin stones for free, but these three items add up to 136 kilograms of origin stones. Senior Sparrow's clear voice resounded in the pavilion. Although you have origin stones, you should still use them to cultivate your battle chi. Battle chi is the foundation, don't waste too much on external items. Although they can obviously increase your strength, they will not help you at all when you step into the Saint realm. I understand. Dongbua Shuang nodded. He had more than 3,000 kilograms of origin stones. The Water Daoist faction had given him another 600 kilograms, so he was very confident. Senior Sparrow, how much can this long rod be worth? Dongbua Shuang flipped his hand, and a scarlet long rod appeared in his hand. This was the Saint-tier low-grade long rod left behind by Elder Lei Zhen. Since he had no use for it, he might as well sell it to the Water Daoist faction. Buying weapons within one's own organization was the cheapest, and selling weapons was also the most worthwhile. Oh? A formless ripple swept past the scarlet long rod. This Saint-tier low-grade weapon, I'll take it as 50 kilograms of origin stones. Senior Sparrow said, looks like you had some fortuitous encounters. Including this long rod, you still need 26 kilograms of origin stones. Oh right, for every transcendent who breaks through, the Water Daoist faction will give you 50 contribution points. Each contribution point is equivalent to 1 kilogram of origin stones. Dongbua Shuang nodded. Of course he knew. The 50 contribution points given by the Water Daoist faction were normally used to exchange for weapons and secret techniques. Furthermore, such a small amount of contribution points could not be exchanged for anything too good. I'll add another 6 kilograms of origin stones, right? Dongbua Shuang was in a good mood as he took out 6 kilograms of origin stones and placed it on the shelf beside him. Who? The origin stone and the scarlet rod that he had taken out disappeared without a trace. Walking out of the weapon pavilion, Dongbua Shuang was fully equipped with transcendent items. Even the worst robe he was wearing was at the peak grade transcendent mortal tier, while the rest were at the Saint tier low grade or even Saint tier top grade. Compared to other transcendents of the same level, I'm definitely not at a disadvantage in terms of weapons. In fact, I might even have an advantage. Dongbua Shuang revealed a smile. Brother Dongbua, you seem to be in a good mood. Gong Liang Yuan said. I've stayed in there for a while longer. I'm ashamed. Dongbua Shuang hurriedly said. Choosing a weapon is a must. What's 1 to 4 hours to us transcendents? Let's go and choose a secret technique. Gong Liang Yuan said. Everyone, remember to vote for me. Everyone gets one every day. Chapter 103. As the sky gradually darkened, many places within the Water Daoist faction were lit up. Within the Secret Arts Pavilion, Dongbua Shuang went straight to the third floor. The first floor contained low-rank secret arts, the second floor contained middle-rank secret arts, and the third floor contained high-rank secret arts and transcendent secret arts. Although the legends said that there were better God-tier secret arts, only the Temple of the Earth God, Bloodshed Tavern, and Demonic Faction had them. Secret arts are indeed important. Dongbua Shuang flipped through some of the secret arts and understood their importance. Do Qi techniques only focused on cultivating Do Qi. Secret arts, on the other hand, focused on the usage of Do Qi. Just like a piece of paper, if it was rolled up and used as a rope, it would only be able to lift a few gene-heavy objects. Any heavier and the paper would break. But if the paper was cut into hundreds of pieces and tied together like a braid, it would be able to lift tens of gene or even hundreds of gene. The same materials, but different combinations, could have completely different levels of endurance. Secret arts allow the exquisite combination of Do Qi. Dongbua Shuang picked up a book on secret arts and looked at the introduction. Some secret arts can greatly increase the effectiveness of Do Qi during defense. Some can greatly increase one's attack power. Some can move more flexibly, consuming the same amount of Do Qi, but with the exquisite combination of Do Qi, one's attack power will greatly increase. Transcendents could train in multiple secret arts at the same time. They could switch between them during battle. Looking at the various top-grade secret arts, Dongbua Shuang felt envious. It's getting late. Dongbua Shuang looked at the sky. Although there were many places in the Water Daoist faction that were still lit up, he estimated that it was already late at night. He was too engrossed in reading the introductions of the secret arts. Unlike weapons that could be casually played with, looking at the introductions of the secret arts, unknowingly, time passed. Right, the vice head mentioned the innermost bookshelf on the third floor. Dongbua Shuang quickly walked to the innermost bookshelf and started searching. Previously, the vice head could tell that I had awakened the primordial bloodline with a single glance and asked me to search for it. Could it be related to the primordial bloodline? Dongbua Shuang was taken aback. He picked up a golden leaf book called Radiant Scroll and read the introduction in it. It's a manual for body cultivation. I didn't expect the Water Daoist faction to have a body training technique. Dongbua Shuang continued to look through the books carefully. Very quickly, he found another book on the same shelf, which also cultivated the body, Devil Dragon Art. The Scroll of Light and the Magic Dragon Art were actually sent back by the founder of the Water Daoist faction, the Water Sovereign. Dongbua Shuang looked at the introduction with admiration. The Water Emperor was the founder of the Water Daoist Temple. He was an ancestor of the Xia people who ascended to godhood over 8 million years ago. After becoming a god and entering the god world, he still remembered his hometown. He thought of a way to send back some Qi's secret arts and body cultivation methods. Actually, many supreme secret techniques were sent back by the ancestors of the Xia people from the immortal realm. The Transcendents could not create such powerful secret techniques. As for God-tier secret techniques, throughout the history of the Xia people, there were so many ancestors who entered the god world, but none of them had ever sent back a god-tier secret technique. The Temple of the Earth God, Bloodshed Tavern, and Demonic Faction all had terrifying existences behind them. Only then would they have god-tier secret techniques. It's actually a body cultivation method. Dongbua Shuang was very excited. Compared to Qi's secret arts, body cultivation methods were few and far between. Under the heavens, the most famous body cultivation methods were the Demonic Faction and the Temple of the Earth God. Maybe my hope for the second awakening of my primordial bloodline lies in these methods. Dongbua Shuang flipped through the two manuals. The second awakening of the primordial bloodline was extremely difficult. There were two ways to awaken it. The first was the body cultivation method. By absorbing the energy of the heavens and earth, one's body would become stronger and stronger. The chances of the second awakening would also increase. According to the records of the Xia people, as long as one awakened the primordial bloodline, when their body reached the peak of the saint stage, they would definitely be able to undergo the second awakening. Of course, once one's body reached the middle stage of the saint stage, the chances of an awakening would be very high. The second method depended on luck. Perhaps during a life and death battle, one would suddenly undergo the second awakening. There were two methods. To rely on luck to undergo the second awakening, the chances were too low. In the countless years of the Xia people's history, not a single one had ever done so. On the contrary, the demonic beast clan had such a lucky one. Relying on luck is not reliable. It's still better to cultivate the body cultivation method. Dongbua Shuang thought to himself. There was a huge difference between body cultivation and Qi cultivation. When one's body improved, the amount of energy required for each breakthrough would increase exponentially. It was much more than the amount of energy required for chi cultivation. The moment a primordial bloodline awakener stepped into the transcendent realm, their body would reach the middle stage of the sky realm. From the middle stage to the peak stage of the sky realm, it would require 1,000 kilograms of origin stones. This was even more than the amount of chi cultivation from the initial stage of the sky realm to the initial stage of the saint stage. Just like this time, when Dongbo Shuang was invited by the Water Daoist faction, they only gave him 600 kilograms of origin stones. From the peak stage of the sky realm to the initial stage of the saint stage, it would require 50,000 kilograms of origin stones. It was even more than the amount of origin stones required for chi cultivation to step into the demigod realm. From the middle stage of the saint realm, it would require around 2 million kilograms of origin stones. It was a number that would cause even demigods to tremble. Most demigods would not be able to gather so many origin stones in their entire lives. From the middle stage of the saint realm to the peak stage, that was an unimaginable amount. In the words of the deity realm, even if all the origin stones in the material world were dug out, it would not be enough. Thus, when one's body evolves to the peak stage of the saint realm, one's primordial bloodline will definitely undergo the second awakening. Was a beautiful wish. The stronger the body, the higher the chances of a second awakening. I have quite a lot of origin stones now. Taking out 500 kilograms of origin stones to raise my body to the peak stage of the sky realm is worth it. Dongbo Shuang thought to himself. In the future, when his strength increases and he has more origin stones, he will take out 50,000 kilograms of origin stones to raise his body to the primary stage of the saint realm. At that time, the chances of an awakening would be even higher. As for the middle stage of the saint realm, that was too far away. Radiance Scroll and Magic Dragon Technique, which one should I choose? Dongbo Shuang looked at the two body cultivation methods in front of him. Chi's secret techniques could be cultivated in many different ways. But body cultivation was completely different. Every body cultivation method would come with a secret technique, and one could only cultivate one secret technique. Magic Dragon Technique came with the secret technique Magic Dragon Strength. Magic Dragon Strength was a secret technique that could change the most minute structure of muscles and bones. Just like mortals. Similarly weak mortals, some were born with great speed, while others were born with great strength. This was the natural difference between muscles and bones. They were all level 6 demonic beasts, but some were extremely fast, while others were extremely strong. Magic Dragon Strength was a secret technique developed from dissecting a powerful magic dragon's body in the deity realm. It was the most compatible with Magic Dragon Technique. It could increase the toughness of muscles and bones, and the explosive power would also be stronger. Magic Dragon Strength secret technique was divided into 5 layers. The first layer could increase one's strength by 20%. Normal transcendents would be able to understand it after some training. The second layer could increase one's strength by 50%. The requirement for one's comprehension was relatively high. The third layer could double one's strength. It was rare to cultivate to this step. Even among the Saint Realm experts, there were only a few who could cultivate it. The fourth layer could triple one's strength. Demigods who cultivated this body technique would usually only reach the fourth layer of the Magic Dragon Strength. The fifth layer could increase one's strength by 6 times. Large success. It was extremely difficult. This secret technique is really powerful. Dongbo Shuang looked at it with longing. A secret technique at the large success level could increase one's strength by 6 times. And this is only considered a transcendent secret technique. What did 6 times the strength mean? Even with the power bloodline activated, one's physical strength would only double. But the Magic Dragon Strength was an evolution of the body's minute structure. Using physical strength normally, one's strength could increase by 6 times. How miraculous was that? Of course, Dongbo Shuang was only a newly advanced transcendent. It was already not bad for him to be able to master this secret technique Magic Dragon Strength. Magic Dragon Technique was paired with the secret technique Magic Dragon Strength. After cultivating, one's strength would increase the most. Radiant Scroll was paired with Radiant Glass Body. After cultivating, one's speed would increase. The increase in speed would also be very terrifying. One must know that experts with the primordial bloodline had a very high recovery rate. As they cultivated, their bodies would get closer to the undying body or even become undying. This was also the reason why many demigods were still willing to cultivate the body technique even though they knew that the chances of a second bloodline awakening was very slim. There were even transcendents who had not awakened their primordial bloodline but still tried to cultivate it. I'll choose the Magic Dragon Technique. Dongbua Shuang thought for a while and made his decision. The reason why he chose the Magic Dragon Technique was because the secret technique Magic Dragon Strength contained many profound mysteries related to fire. The Radiant Glass Body contained the profound mysteries of light. Dongbua Shuang had already comprehended the profound mysteries of fire and water. Naturally, he would choose the one that was suitable for him. Secondly, it was because it could increase one's strength. It was also more suitable for him to use it together with his innate talent, the Power Burst. Thirdly, it was because his primordial bloodline was the Power Bloodline. If he chose the path of power, his chances of awakening the second time would be higher. Senior Dragon, Senior Sparrow, I have already made my choice. I will only choose the Magic Dragon Technique. Dongbua Shuang said. Not choosing the Battle Chi secret technique? Senior Dragon's deep voice sounded. Not for the time being. Dongbua Shuang smiled. The Magic Dragon Technique could be exchanged in 2 parts. However, since he had the chance to choose once for free, Dongbua Shuang naturally wanted to get the whole book. As for the Battle Chi secret technique, right now, his Battle Chi was only at the sky initial phase. Even if he were to study the secret technique, it would not be able to compare to his physical strength in a short period of time. After all, his energy was limited. It would not be too late to cultivate the secret technique after his Battle Chi cultivation caught up to his physical strength. After all, the secret technique was easier to cultivate the higher one's realm was. Everything is done. Battle Chi's secret technique, weapon, secret technique, everything is in my hands. Dongbua Shuang walked out of the secret technique pavilion. The sky was still dark and there was a crescent moon in the sky. It is time to go to the infernal realm. All newly advanced transcendents had to go to the infernal realm as soon as possible. Chapter 104. That is the gate of the world, which leads to the Xia capital of the infernal realm. Gong Liang Yuan said. At the top of an icy mountain within the Water Daoist faction, there was a gate that was emitting ripples in the air. Come, let us enter. Yes. Dongbua Shuang was also filled with anticipation. He knew what was in the infernal realm, and was naturally filled with anticipation. Who? The two of them flew side by side into the gate of the world. The moment they passed through, they felt as though their bodies were submerged in water. The feeling of stagnation only lasted for a moment, and with a "pu" sound, they arrived at the other end of the gate of the world. This, Dongbua Shuang looked on in shock. At this moment, he was standing beside the gate of the world on a tall mountain. Although it was night time, the moonlight shone down on this world. In front of him was a majestic and domineering city. Within the city, there were 9 main roads that extended outwards, as though they were 9 mystical dragons. Beside the roads, there were mansions of various sizes, arranged in picturesque disorder. In the center of the entire city, there was a majestic palace. The palace was constantly emitting an endless amount of power, with a misty fiery glow. In the dark of the night, this palace was the most dazzling. Xia capital. Dongbua Shuang muttered. Yes, this is the Xia capital. It is the true capital of the entire Xia people. Gong Liang Yuan's eyes were filled with passion. Over the generations, the Xia people have met with many dangers. For example, the birth of a deity from the beast clan, the invasion of the demons, and even the invasion of the alien races. But because of the Xia capital and the infernal realm, we, the Xia people, have always been able to prosper. Gong Liang Yuan pointed to the majestic palace that was emitting a misty fiery glow. The palace in the center of the capital is the Infernal Palace. The reason why it is named Infernal Palace is because it has the meaning of passing on the torch. How many times has the material world outside turned into ruins? The mortals were almost wiped out, and the vitality of the Xia people was greatly damaged. But even if we are temporarily defeated, we still have the infernal realm. There are billions of mortals living in the infernal realm. Furthermore, the Xia capital has left behind almost all of the important inheritances of the Xia people. When the war is unwinnable, the transcendents will retreat to the infernal realm. Gong Liang Yuan said. We will wait for the right time to reclaim our world. Dongbua Shuang nodded. The power of a god transcended all extraordinary powers. When the magical beast clan gave birth to a divine spirit, the entire Xia people could not resist at all. The 6 great transcendent organizations did not hesitate to move their headquarters into the infernal world. He had to try his best to preserve his vitality. The infernal world was a large transcendent world. Deities could not enter it. In the beginning, the demonic beast race wantonly destroyed, almost slaughtering all the mortals in the world. Magical beasts multiplied and covered almost all the land and oceans. But in the end, the gods were expelled from the world. The Xia people would kill their way back. The Xia people had a deeper foundation. In a situation where there were no deities, they could completely crush the magical beast clan. The enmity between both sides grew deeper and deeper. When the Xia people gave birth to a divine spirit, they would often slaughter the magical beast clan. Occasionally, both sides would negotiate. For example, when the humans were at a disadvantage, they would try to move as many mortals as possible into the infernal realm. The magical beast clan, the demons of the dark abyss, the races of the other worlds. Gong Liang Yuan said. There are many dangers, but we built the infernal realm to be impregnable, allowing us to hold on until now. Many of the laws of the Xia people were set by the Xia capital. In the imperial city of the outside world. It was just for show. The Dragon Mountain Manor, the Empire's army, etc. were all directly controlled by the Xia capital. Otherwise, why would the Empire's army have so many transcendents? Dongbua Shuang and Gong Liang Yuan flew side by side. This Xia capital had been built and perfected over the years. Many terrifying arrays were stacked on top of each other. In terms of stability, it was countless times stronger than the array beneath the Black Wind Abyss. One had to know that this place had experienced the invasion of all sorts of demigods from other races. Those demigods who dared to invade this place were all armed with powerful deity weapons. However, the Xia people had been here for a long time. No matter who dared to invade this place, the only ending for them was defeat and escape. The Xia capital is a place where many legend rankers train. Gong Liang Yuan pointed to the countless mansions below. There are also many transcendents. Practically all the Sky Realm transcendents are here. Even saints and demigods have mansions here. Occasionally, they would come to the Xia capital. Then why are there still the headquarters of the 6 great transcendent organizations in the outside world? Dongbua Shuang was puzzled. This Xia capital could become a gathering place for all the transcendents. It's to protect the mortal world. Gong Liang Yuan said. The mortal world outside is the most stable and perfect. It can nurture countless mortals and is the foundation of the Xia people. It is also the place where the ancestors of the Xia people lived. The headquarters of the 6 great transcendent organizations oversee the world. The moment they discover the demons of the dark abyss, the races of the other planes, etc., they must be exterminated immediately. Understood. Dongbua Shuang nodded. The infernal world was much safer. The mortal world was very safe when there were no disturbances. However, the moment there was a huge disturbance, it would be very terrifying. The historical records of the invasion of the Dark Abyss had caused incomparably terrifying destruction and destruction. There had to be transcendents standing guard at all times, ready to respond at any time. So. The two of them flew. Very quickly, under Gong Liang Yuan's lead, they landed in front of one of the many mansions. The door of the mansion was already opened. Guards stood at the entrance, while rows of servants and maids stood inside. These servants and maids had already been waiting for almost a day. "This is your future master, Master Dongbua," Gong Liang Yuan said directly. "Greetings, master." Over 1,000 people knelt down in an orderly manner. They were incomparably respectful. "This is..." Dongbua Shuang was surprised. "This is your mansion, Dongbua?" Gong Liang Yuan laughed. "If you are not satisfied, you can change to another mansion. However, I guess you should be very satisfied. The mansions of the other 9 transcendents in the Tranquil Sun province are all around your mansion." Dongbua Shuang looked at his surroundings in surprise. "All around? Look, that mansion belongs to Elder Chang Feng, Qiu Qi Bai. The mansion next to it belongs to Elder Devil Blade, Peng Shan." Gong Liang Yuan introduced. "In order to welcome you, the 9 transcendents of the Tranquil Sun province are currently in the Xia capital." "Ah!" Dongbua Shuang was moved. The 9 transcendents were all here, but he had stayed at home for a month. He felt ashamed. However, he could feel that the transcendents of the Tranquil Sun province were very united. "As for the guards, maids in your mansion, haha, every mansion has them. Even the mansion of a legend ranker has over 100 servants. After all, they are here for life and death training. Naturally, there are servants to take care of the trivial matters." Gong Liang Yuan said. "Do they get paid?" Dongbua Shuang was once a lord. He immediately asked. "Ha!" When Gong Liang Yuan heard Dongbua Shuang ask this, he could not help but laugh. "Don't worry, they are all paid by the Infernal Palace. Actually, countless mortals are willing to serve the transcendents. The salary is secondary. The more important thing is the opportunity to learn spells and obtain powerful Do-Chi techniques. High-grade Do-Chi techniques and even top-grade Do-Chi techniques are all possible." Dongbua Shuang blinked his eyes. His 3-stage flame technique was only a middle-grade technique. "Alright, you can go in and rest. My mission is considered complete after sending you here," Gong Liang Yuan said. "This time, I have troubled Elder Gong Liang. Elder Gong Liang, do you want to come in and have a seat?" Dongbua Shuang said. Gong Liang Yuan said, "Tomorrow, Elder Chang Feng and the rest of the Tranquil Sun province will definitely welcome you. The sky is already bright. You should take a good rest. You still have a lot of things to do." Dongbua Shuang was startled. He nodded his head and did not insist. He really had a lot of things to do. He would have to deal with some of his transcendents. Especially for the upcoming transcendent battle of life and death, he had to make preparations. Chapter 105. After sending Gong Liang Yuan off, Dongbua Shuang entered his own mansion. The mansion was luxurious, there were more servants and maids than in Snowrock Castle. A lady dressed in white said respectfully, "Master, I am Su Qin, the housekeeper of Master's mansion. If Master needs anything, please let me know." Female housekeeper? Dongbua Shuang looked at the female housekeeper. She was pretty and had a great figure. She could be considered a stunner. Judging from her aura, this female housekeeper should be a meteor mage. Such a stunning young meteor mage. If she was in the mortal world, she would be pursued by countless men. But now, she was a housekeeper for a transcendent. This made Dongbua Shuang grumble to himself. Most of the maids in the mansion did not cultivate Do-Chi or magic power, but their figures and looks were considered good. There were a few that were close to being a housekeeper. Their figures and looks were even better than Kong Yu. But because they did not cultivate Do-Chi or magic power, their temperament was much worse. So many beauties. The Infernal Palace is really considerate of the transcendents. Dongbua Shuang thought to himself. He then instructed, "Su Qin, explain the layout of the mansion." "Yes." Su Qin looked at Dongbu Shuang, her heart was filled with joy. She was appointed as a housekeeper for a transcendent by the infernal palace. She was originally very uneasy. After all, in front of a transcendent, mortals were helpless. Most of the housekeepers of transcendents would naturally become transcendent women. Su Qin could not resist and could only accept it. But ever since she came to this mansion, she heard that her master was an extremely young demon. He was a transcendent at the age of 28. Becoming a transcendent at the age of 28? Su Qin heaved a sigh of relief. At least he wouldn't be an old man anymore. When Dongbu Shuang and Gong Liang Yuan landed in front of the mansion, Su Qin took a good look at her master. He was very young. His temperament was extraordinary. Although he was not very handsome, he was very pleasing to look at. Su Qin's heart was filled with sweetness. "Master, these are the residences of the guards outside." Su Qin and Dongbu Shuang walked around the mansion. There were 2 maids following behind them. "These are the residences of the maids." They walked to the center of the mansion. "This is where Master lives. There's a guest hall, a cultivation area, and so on. The maids all live in the surroundings. I live in Master's side hall and can listen to Master's orders." Su Qin explained in detail. Her voice was gentle, it was clear that she had gone through some basic training in the infernal palace. Her voice was soft. Shuang was impressed. The housekeeper and the group of maids seemed to be in good order. If this was in the mortal world outside, perhaps only those 1,000-year-old clans would be able to cultivate so many outstanding maids. Those female attendants and servants within the castle of his Dongbo clan were too ordinary. Many of them were like the daughters of farmers. "All right, all of you can leave now." Dongbu Shuang instructed and prepared to go rest. Through the energy of heaven and earth, he had already understood the layout of the mansion. Previously, he wasn't sure what was the purpose of each place. Now, he understood. "Yes." Housekeeper Su Qin and the maids replied respectfully before retreating. When Su Qin left, a smile appeared on her face. Although this transcendent didn't seem to care about her, they would naturally develop feelings for each other after spending so much time together. This was the first time they met. She was quite satisfied with this transcendent master of hers. The next morning, Eternal Wind Knight Qiu Qibai sent someone to deliver an invitation. He invited him to attend a banquet at noon at Qiu Qibai's mansion. The other transcendents of Tranquil Sun Province would be there. Noon of the same day. Dongbu Shuang walked out of his mansion. With another step, Shua, his figure appeared at the entrance of Qiu Qibai's mansion. The guards at the entrance were not surprised at the sudden appearance of the black-robed young man. As the guards of Eternal Wind Knight's mansion, they often saw transcendents. The speed of transcendence was beyond their imagination. "Lord Dongbua, please." Immediately, a guard led the way. The guard led the way, followed by the maids. Arriving at the main hall, there were already 6 transcendents seated inside. They were all seated on the floor, with a table in front of them. This was the way the Xia people ate in ancient times. In the mortal world, only a few of the more particular clans would still eat like this. For example, Dongbu Shuiying's parents were adventurers in the past, so they didn't pay much attention to it. They would sit at the same table when they ate. As for transcendents, they had long lifespans and preferred the ancient way of eating. Furthermore, they would naturally be wary of other transcendents. Sitting together for a meal would cause them to be nervous. Sitting separately would make them feel more at ease. Snow Eagle is here. The one sitting at the head of the table was Eternal Wind Knight Qiu Qibai. Currently, Qiu Qibai had snow-white hair and was drinking wine. He looked rather carefree and unrestrained, but there was always an indescribable sadness in his expression. "Big brother Eternal Wind." Dongbu Shuang bowed, then looked at the other 5 transcendents. "Greetings, big brother and big sister." "Big sister?" The only female transcendent present laughed. "Snow Eagle is a newly advanced transcendent, and he is also the youngest amongst us." Is it wrong to call him big brother and big sister? Qiu Qibai said. On the left of Qiu Qibai, a man with a blade on his back laughed, that's right. However, this is the first time that little sister Ling Shu is being called big sister. Dongbua Shuang slightly paid attention to the man with the blade on his back. One must know that all transcendents had storage treasures. Normally, weapons would be kept in the storage treasure, and with a single thought, it would appear in the hands of the transcendents, and the speed would be much faster than pulling it out from the back. Hence, it was rare to see someone carrying a weapon on his back. As for the so-called familiarity with the weapon, almost all transcendents had reached power as one perfection, and there was no need for them to carry a weapon on them at all times. Usually, those who carried a weapon on their back, other than having a special hobby, would have a special, secret technique. My name is Qing Ling Shu. Next time, you can just call me Sister Ling Shu. Calling me big sister feels weird. The female transcendent said. Her looks could only be considered average, but her personality was rather straightforward. Sister Ling Shu. Dongbua Shuang immediately shouted. Qing Ling Shu instantly smiled brightly. Snow Eagle, sit down first. Let me introduce to you. In a while, there will be 3 more coming, and they are all from our tranquil Sun province. Qiu Qibai said, we are all from the same province, so naturally, we have to help each other. We are from the same transcendent organization, and we are from the same province. If we don't help each other, who will help you? N. Dongbua Shuang nodded. He could feel the cordial atmosphere between everyone, and the leader of this group was Qiu Qibai. Dongbua Shuang felt that Qiu Qibai was the kind of person who was born with the temperament of a leader, and people were willing to stand beside him. Very soon, the other 3 transcendents arrived one after another. The 10 transcendents of Tranquil Sun Province were gathered here. They were Qiu Qibai, Peng Shan, Dongbua Shuang, Qingling Shu, Dong Yu, Wu Kuei, Zong Tu, Ba Ming, Zi Che Gu Feng, and Hai Ru Zhen. 3 of them were transcendent mages. There were 8 men and 2 women, and their ages varied. The oldest was Devil Blade Knight Peng Shan, and he was already more than 1,100 years old. Everyone, please vote for me. Chapter 106. The 10 transcendents gathered together, drinking and chatting, gradually becoming familiar with each other. Peng Shan put down his cup and said with a smile, Snow Eagle, I'm the oldest here, so I'll say a few words. You have just arrived at the Xia capital. The most important thing is the upcoming transcendent battle of life and death. You are the youngest person to step into the transcendent realm in 1,000 years. Many people want to see your transcendent battle of life and death. I'm afraid even some demigods who are in seclusion might come. Demigods had long lifespans, so they rarely interfered with the affairs of ordinary transcendents. That's right. Many people think highly of you. You have to pass at least 6 rounds. Otherwise, you will lose face. Zong Tu said hurriedly. Don't think that 6 rounds is easy. Big Brother Eternal Wind also won 6 rounds back then. Very difficult. Qiu Qibai nodded. Mountain Lord he only had 3 matches in the past. The main reason was that the Infernal Palace would send out some Transcendent World Aboriginals towards the end. If they were not careful, they would be defeated. Furthermore, the further I go, the stronger these natives become. I can be considered to be good at fighting, but I still stopped at 6 battles. Dongbua Shuang nodded. Qiu Qibai was indeed famous for his battle prowess. He had constantly made breakthroughs in each and every battle. Back then, the seemingly ordinary profound mystery of wind in myriad existences was able to display a relatively powerful strength. Afterward, he had even grasped the true meaning of space cleavage in one go, and his name had truly shaken the world. Little brother Snow Eagle, don't feel pressured. Try your best. Although during the transcendent battle of life and death, there will be demigods watching and helping at any time. But transcendents fight too quickly, and you might lose your life in an instant. Qingling Shu advised. Dongbua Shuang started to sweat. Calling him little brother Snow Eagle? However, there was nothing for him to resist. The youngest person in this group was Qingling Shu, and she was already over 100 years old. They were even older than his grandparents. Let's do our best. Snow Eagle has awakened his primordial bloodline, so his recovery ability is extremely strong. He won't die so easily. Peng Shan said, moreover, this is a rare opportunity. It's the best opportunity to obtain extraordinary contribution points. You have to grasp it well. Dongbua Shuang replied with a smile. He really wanted to go all out in the transcendent battle of life and death. Firstly, the more dazzling he was, the more attention he would receive from the highest-ranking demigods of the human race. Even if someone wanted to place a bounty on Dongbua Shuang, the bounty offered by the Bloodshed Tavern would be even more shocking. Secondly, it was to sharpen himself. Where else could he find such a low-risk opportunity to fight a transcendent? Thirdly, it was for extraordinary contribution points. One contribution point was equivalent to half a kilogram of origin stones. Winning the first round would give him 10 contribution points, the second round would give him 20 contribution points, and the third round would give him 40 contribution points. The number kept increasing. The most powerful person in history had passed the 11th round, and the total amount of contribution points he had obtained was more than 20,000. That was over 10,000 kilograms of origin stones. The origin stones that Elder Lei Zhen had left behind were only about 1,000 kilograms. Of course, one could not compare to the strongest person in the history of the Xia people. In the past 10,000 years, the strongest person was Dan Qingyan. She had passed 9 rounds and earned more than 5,000 contribution points. This is the easiest way to earn contribution points. After the transcendent battle of life and death, you will need to take on many life and death training missions. For the sake of 10 contribution points, you will have to risk your life. Peng Shan sighed, so if you miss this opportunity, there won't be another one in the future. Dongbua Shuang nodded his head slightly. Snow Eagle, after the transcendent battle of life and death, you will need to be careful of the natives in the infernal realm. At the same time, you will also need to be careful of human transcendence. Peng Shan said. Be careful of them? Dongbua Shuang frowned, don't tell me they will use underhanded methods. Transcendents have different personalities. Qiu Qibai said softly, there are all kinds of people. There are those who are sinister and selfish, and those who are crazy. Although killing a transcendent will be investigated by the Infernal Palace, and once the truth is found, you will be sentenced to death. But you must understand, the Infernal Palace has to find out the truth first. If they don't, what can you do? Qingling Shu also said, that's right, those who directly want your life are rare, but those who scheme against you are very common. If you get schemed against, you can only blame yourself for not knowing the right person. Many transcendents are restricted by the rules of the Infernal Palace, but there is one place that is not restricted, and that is the Bloodshed Tavern. Qiu Qibai continued, if someone places a bounty on your life, the Bloodshed Tavern will immediately send an assassin to deal with you. Even if you ask for help and we rush over, but if he has already killed you, he will not be guilty of killing you. We are just going to let the Bloodshed Tavern do what they want. Dongbua Shuang frowned. He always felt that the Bloodshed Tavern was too tyrannical. Qiu Qibai shook his head helplessly, let me put it this way, the Temple of the Earth God and the Bloodshed Tavern both have impressive existences from the deity world behind them. Some of the ancestors of the Xia people who entered the deity world have also spread the word that we can fall out with the Temple of the Earth God, kick the Temple of the Earth God out, and rely on another deity world power. However, we definitely cannot fall out with the Bloodshed Tavern. Ah! Dongbua Shuang was stunned. The background of the Bloodshed Tavern was really powerful. The Bloodshed Tavern is just a simple assassin mission. They have their own rules, and will not make the heavens angry. Qiu Qibai said, if they want to place a bounty on you, the more monstrous you are, the more shocking the bounty would be. Thus, it is very rare for a transcendent to have a bounty on their head. Dongbua Shuang nodded. The Bloodshed Tavern was famous for being shady. The price was extremely high. Oh right, Snow Eagle, are you interested in becoming a teacher at my Eternal Wind Academy? Qiu Qibai suddenly said, don't worry, being a teacher at Transcendent is just a title, occasionally giving some pointers. At most, we would meet some good seedlings and accept a few disciples. Our Eternal Wind Academy already has 4 Transcendents, and is the strongest in the Tranquil Sun province. Eternal Wind. Peng Shan said unhappily, you are really fast at poaching people. I haven't even started yet. Dongbua Shuang laughed. Qiu Qibai had established the Eternal Wind Academy, and Peng Shan had also established the Demon Blade Institute. Let's wait for the future. I have just become a Transcendent, so I should focus on training. In the future, I might become a teacher. Dongbua Shuang said, oh right, my younger brother Dongbua Qingshi is about to go to the Eternal Wind Academy. Your younger brother? That's great. Our Eternal Wind Academy welcomes all talented youngsters. Qiu Qibai laughed, last time when I went to your place, I saw your younger brother. He is a good seedling. In the entire Tranquil Sun province, there are only 3 Transcendent mages. Our Eternal Wind Academy has 2, Ziche and Old Man Hai. Don't worry, I will carefully observe your younger brother. If he is talented and hardworking enough, accepting him as a disciple is a small matter. The white-haired Old Man Hai Ruzhen said. Why would you accept him? Maybe he would prefer to be my disciple. Ziche Gufeng also said. Although he said that, if the 2 of them really didn't like him, they would at most accept him as a disciple in name. This could be considered as giving face to Dongbua Shuang. After all, they were all Transcendents of the Tranquil Sun province. Not to mention that Dongbua Shuang was such a monster. Everyone felt that he had a high chance of becoming a saint. The 10 Transcendents drank and chatted until the sky turned dark. Only then did they disperse. Dongbua Shuang also returned to his residence. Master. The female housekeeper Su Qin was already waiting at the door. Master, the people from the Infernal Palace have been waiting for more than 2 hours. Ah! Dongbua Shuang was slightly surprised. He immediately walked towards the main hall. There was indeed a young man sitting in the hall waiting silently. When he saw Dongbua Shuang walking in, he immediately stood up and said respectfully, Greetings Lord Dongbua, I am here under orders to inquire. May I know when Lord Dongbua intends to start the Transcendent Battle of Life and Death? The Transcendent Battle of Life and Death must be carried out within a year of breaking through to the Transcendent Realm. If it exceeded a year, it would be considered as giving up. Dongbua Shuang thought for a while, then said, half a year later. I will be participating in the Transcendent Battle of Life and Death in half a year. Alright, then I will report this. The young man said. I shall not disturb you any further. Goodbye. Dongbua Shuang nodded. The Infernal Palace emissary immediately left. From the day he left the Black Wind Abyss, he had been calculating the time. He had to participate in the Transcendent Battle of Life and Death within a year. Now that a month had passed, and he had just broken through, he had yet to cultivate his Do Chi techniques and secret techniques. Half a year was more than enough. It's time to prepare for the upcoming Transcendent Battle of Life and Death. Dongbua Shuang immediately decided to start cultivating tonight. Chapter 107. Night. In the secret cultivation room of the mansion, the door was lowered, and no one could enter. The secret cultivation room was so sturdy that anyone below the demigod level would not be able to move it. Even a demigod would need many times to destroy the secret cultivation room. The secret cultivation room was 20 meters wide, and there was nothing on the ground. Dongbua Shuang placed 10 fire crystal lamps in the secret cultivation room, and the secret cultivation room was brightly lit. He then sat cross-legged on the empty ground in the middle of the secret cultivation room. The ground was smooth, and it was cold to sit on. With a flip of his hand, a gray pebble-like dawn stone appeared in his hand. It was the size of a palm, and it weighed about half a kilogram. Hua, following Dongbua Shuaying's movement, the Dawn Stone's primordial energy that had accumulated for a long period of time began to slowly flow into Dongbu Shuiying's body. When the world was first formed, energy did not have any elemental attributes. This was the primordial energy of the world. Absorbing this energy had a very light burden on the Dantian's Qi Si, and the growth of the Dantian's Qi Si was much faster than absorbing energy from the world. From the weakest sky realm transcendence to the demigod realm, the Dawn Stone was the most important thing to them, and it had no flaws. For example, some transcendent sorcerers could concoct potions, pills, and the like, which could greatly increase the speed of cultivation, but they all had flaws. It would greatly increase the difficulty of breaking through bottlenecks in the future. Those who were truly ambitious would either slowly absorb the energy of the world or only use the Dawn Stone. For a monster like Dongbu Shuiying, if he dared to use some potions or pills, he would be destroying his own future. Starfire. Within the Dantian's Qi Si, the transcendent Qi condensed into countless starfire. The starfire revolved around it layer by layer. At this time, the primordial energy of the world surged in, and was immediately attracted by the outermost starfire Qi, and then by the innermost layer of starfire Qi. After going through layers of transformation, when it passed through the entire layer of starfire Qi, the primordial energy of the world was completely transformed into transcendent Qi. Actually, even without that starfire Qi technique, it could still be forcefully transformed. But that was too slow, and the burden on the Dantian's Qi Si was too great. This stupid method of absorbing the energy of the world from the outside world, and even if one cultivated day and night for 800 years, one's Qi reserves would not be enough to enter the Saint Realm. Hence, the Dawn Stone was very important, and the technique was also very important. His Do Qi continued to accumulate at an astonishing speed, becoming denser and denser. After the time taken to brew a pot of tea, Dongbu Shuiying felt that his Dantian's Qi Hai was holding up, and immediately stopped. The amount of Do Qi I have managed to cultivate in just a short time is more than the amount of Do Qi I have managed to cultivate in the past month. Dongbu Shuiying was shocked. Of course, this was also because he did not have a good Do Qi cultivation method for the past month. If he used the Starfire Do Qi technique to cultivate, using origin stones and absorbing the energy of heaven and earth, the difference in the amount of Do Qi produced was about 20 times. Next, it's time to study the secret technique. With a flip of his hand, Dongbu Shuiying took out the Magic Dragon Skill book. The Magic Dragon art was a top-grade technique passed down from the God realm. It was only one grade lower than a God-tier technique. He flipped through the book. Purely absorbing the energy of heaven and earth to strengthen one's body was easy to understand, but the secret technique Magic Dragon Strength was extremely complicated and difficult to understand. There were many good secret techniques, such as the Bloodshed Tavern's God-tier Massacre secret technique. Each of them was extremely terrifying, and if a God-tier Massacre secret technique was trained to perfection, each of them would become a terrifying god of slaughter. But in reality, it was already very difficult to even get started. How many people could actually train a God-tier Massacre secret technique to perfection? Just the Magic Dragon Strength in his hand alone was already an extremely difficult thing to accomplish. Buzz! The golden book in his hand immediately emitted a faint light, and a three-dimensional seal appeared on top of the book. The seal was made up of tens of thousands of densely packed threads, causing Dongbu Shuiying to feel dizzy just looking at it. This is only the first level of the Magic Dragon Strength? Dongbu Shuiying was somewhat speechless. This should be left to a sorcerer to figure out. Secret technique Magic Dragon Strength. It required one to use the energy of heaven and earth to form a God Seal. When these God Seals fused into one's body, it would gradually change one's body, allowing one's body to become more proficient in explosive power. Although they were both 6th-grade magical beasts, the difference between a normal one and a mutated one was extremely shocking. The secret technique was to allow Dongbu Shuiying's body to gradually become special, becoming stronger and stronger. This type of God Seal was also known as the Magic Dragon Divine Seal. The simplest of the God Seals was this three-dimensional seal in front of him. As for the 5th-level God Seal, it could directly increase one's physical strength by 6 times. Although this magic dragon divine seal was more inclined towards physical strength, with such an explosive increase in physical strength, speed, toughness, and other aspects would also increase accordingly. Isn't this God seal a little too difficult? Although Dongbua Shuang felt a headache coming on, he still focused on studying it. It was made up of tens of thousands of threads, and the level of complexity would make even a transcendent sorcerer speechless. Cultivating the secret technique required one to continuously fuse the God seals into one's body. With just a thought, the magic dragon divine seal would be formed one by one. It was impossible to copy it slowly. Thus, one had to truly comprehend it, and be able to instantly condense the magic dragon divine seal one by one. Only then would one be able to successfully cultivate the first level of this secret technique. Time passed, second after second. Dongbua Shuang focused his attention on studying this three-dimensional magic dragon divine seal. Gradually, a look of excitement appeared on his face. This was because he discovered that the tens of thousands of threads that formed the first level of the magic dragon divine seal contained some profound mysteries. These mysteries were the profound mysteries of flames of all creation. No wonder the book said that this secret technique was suitable for transcendents who cultivated the profound mysteries of flames of all creation. The profound mysteries of heaven and earth can actually be used like this? Dongbua Shuang exclaimed. This God seal had opened up a whole new world to him. The profound mysteries of the first level of the magic dragon divine seal was very simple. But by relying on these simple profound mysteries, it was able to form the God seal and even cause the human body to evolve. How inconceivable was this? Although Dongbua Shuang had also grasped the profound mysteries of water and fire of all creation, it was obvious that his usage of them was too simple. However, he understood. Even an existence who had become a god would find it difficult to create such a secret technique. Those who were able to create top-grade secret techniques were all relatively powerful existences in the divine world. Only then would they be able to use a few profound mysteries to form an extremely complicated first-level God seal. Furthermore, as the profound mysteries deepened, the God seal would also become more and more complicated. After that, there was the second level of the magic dragon divine seal, the third level, the fourth level, and even the highest level, the fifth level. Although I am far from being comparable to the supreme experts of the divine world, but I can definitely use them as a reference. Dongbua Shuang thought to himself. By using the profound mysteries of water and fire of all creation more efficiently, I can create an even more powerful spear technique. The God seal represented a whole new world. It was a world that transcendents had to look up to. But they were gradually getting closer to perfection. Following that, Dongbua Shuang stopped thinking about random things and focused on studying the first level of the magic dragon divine seal. Although he only spent 6 hours to understand the profound mysteries of using the tens of thousands of threads. Understanding it did not mean that he could form the God seal with a single thought. Dongbua Shuang had tried to manipulate the heaven and earth energy from the outside world. To condense the heaven and earth energy into tens of thousands of threads, this was something he could do with his powerful soul. But to combine the tens of thousands of threads was like splitting his mind into tens of thousands of threads. It was completely messed up. I have to form it with a single thought. And I have to understand its essence. Dongbua Shuang continued to ponder. Time passed day by day. Dongbua Shuang would either relax or practice his spear techniques. Occasionally, he would go out to meet his friends. The rest of his time would be spent on studying the magic dragon divine seal. And at the same time, the Infernal Palace also informed all the transcendents that half a year later, Dongbua Shuang would be participating in a transcendent battle of life and death. Dongbua Shuang will be participating in a transcendent battle of life and death in half a year? He is the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years. The news began to circulate in the taverns and restaurants of the Xia capital. Many legend rankers knew about it and immediately spread the news by word of mouth. Many legend rankers were training and tempering themselves in the Xia capital. Normally, legend rankers would be very excited to watch a transcendent battle of life and death. To them, watching a transcendent battle of life and death was a rare opportunity. The news spread. In one of the small mansions in the Xia capital, one could tell that it was a legend ranker's mansion from the size of the mansion. Goo goo goo. Jing Qiu, who was dressed in a green dress, was sitting in the garden with an exhausted expression. Her face was a little pale, and the long period of research had made her very tired. She drank a glass of water in one go, and after putting it down, the maidservant beside her immediately refilled it. Jing Qiu rarely drank alcohol. She preferred to drink water. Master, master. Suddenly, a young girl ran in from outside. She was filled with excitement. You little girl, why are you so excited? Jing Qiu laughed. Master, I heard that half a year later, the transcendent Dongbui Shuang will be participating in a transcendent battle of life and death. This is the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years. The young girl was so excited that her face was red. Jing Qiu was stunned. Dongbui Shuang? Him? Not dead? Chapter 108. Jing Qiu had always thought that Dongbui Shuang had died. But now, not only was he not dead, he had even become a transcendent and was about to start the transcendent battle of life and death in half a year. She had always had a special feeling for Dongbui Shuang. She could never forget the moment when she was at her most desperate, when the black-robed youth rushed out from the explosion and protected her from the collapse of the flagstone, giving her an absolute sense of security. As an extremely intelligent and powerful legend mage, she did not fall in love with Dongbui Shuang because of this. But at the very least, Dongbui Shuang had left a deep mark in her heart. You said Dongbui Shuang? He didn't die. Jing Qiu asked, did you hear wrongly? Died? He didn't die. The young lady said doubtfully. Is it Dongbui Shuang from the Tranquil Sun province? Jing Qiu asked again. She was worried that it was someone with the same name. However, to be known as the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years, logically speaking, it was impossible for two people with the same name to appear in the world at the same time. Yes, he is from the Tranquil Sun province. I heard that he escaped from the Black Wind Abyss about a month ago. The young lady said. He is only 28 years old this year. Wow, he is even younger than you, master. You little girl. Hearing this, Jing Qiu's heart calmed down. It seemed that she was right. It was indeed the Dongbui Shuang that she knew of. I will go out for a while. Jing Qiu stood up. Master, do you need us to accompany you when you go out? The young lady said. Her master often researched spells. Only when she was stuck in a bottleneck would she occasionally take on some of the easier missions. Normally, she would rarely go out. As for those legend-ranked knights, most of them liked to go to pubs, restaurants and other places to drink and chat. No need. Jing Qiu casually put on a cloak and walked out of her mansion. Very quickly, she arrived at a rather lively tavern. Casually ordering a cup of fruit wine, she sat in a corner and listened to the conversations going on. Many people were chatting in the tavern. Some were talking about the life and death mission that they had just gone through, some were talking about the native creatures of a certain supernatural world, and some were talking about Dongbui Shuang. This Dongbui Shuang is really amazing. He's the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years. I think he'll be able to win at least 6 matches in this transcendent battle of life and death. Impressive indeed, he's only 28 years old. Amazing. I think he'll be lucky if he can win 3 matches. 3 rounds? Isn't that too little? You don't understand. Dongbui Shuang is the youngest in 1,000 years. What does it mean to be young? This meant that he had too little combat experience. On the other hand, the cultivation time is too short. An old man gulped down a mouthful of wine, his breath reeking of alcohol. He has only cultivated for a short period of time, so his comprehension of the realms of myriad existences would be rather shallow. Those old fellows who have been stuck at the legend rank for a very long time, some of them could even be ranked in the top 10 of the Dragon Mountain list. Some of them could even be ranked in the top 3 of the Dragon Mountain list. Their realms and experience are much more formidable than Dongbui Shuang. What the drunkard said makes sense. For Dongbua Shuang to become a transcendent, he might have had a fortuitous encounter. His own realms and combat experience might not be that high. He didn't have many battles that he could bring out. The only battle he had was with Xiang Pangyun. I've heard that Xiang Pangyun was only ranked 500 in the Dragon Mountain list. These legend rankers were discussing amongst themselves. Normally, those who could become transcendents were ranked in the top 50 of the Dragon Mountain list. Some of them were even ranked in the top 10 or top 3. To perish together with Xiang Pangyun, who was ranked 500, was nothing much in the eyes of these legend rankers. It was only because Dongbua Shuang was only 22 years old at that time. To be able to achieve such a feat at 22 years old would be considered a monster. However, the transcendent battle of life and death did not care if you were young or not. In the end, it still tested your strength. Therefore, being young would be at a disadvantage. Sometimes, those old fellows who were over 100 years old would be able to perform better. They are looking down on Dongbua Shuang too much. Jing Qiu held on to her fruit wine as she listened. At that time, Dongbua Shuang will definitely stun them. Her heart was completely leaning towards Dongbua Shuang's side. However, Jing Qiu's rationality told her that these legend rankers' suspicions were reasonable. When she first met Dongbua Shuang, the demonic emissary that he killed was only an ordinary legend ranker. Later on, when he killed Xiang Pangyun, he was only ranked around 500. Very quickly, Jing Qiu finished her fruit wine and stood up to leave. The main reason she came here was to verify the news. From the looks of it, Dongbua Shuang was indeed alive. Furthermore, he would be participating in the transcendent battle of life and death very soon. Half a year later. At that time, I will be able to see Dongbua Shuang. Jing Qiu was secretly looking forward to it. Sitting in the backyard of his mansion, Dongbua Shuang was eating snacks. At the same time, he was mobilizing the heaven and earth energy in an attempt to form the first layer of the demonic dragon divine seal. Hua! Countless threads instantly formed a three-dimensional seal and floated in front of him. This scene shocked the two maids who were serving him. However, as maids, they were still very obedient. They did not dare to make a sound and disturb their master. There are still many mistakes. Again. With a thought, Dongbua Shuang caused the countless threads to form a three-dimensional seal. He tried again and again. A few days ago, when he was drinking with Knight Yao Blade Pengshan in a pub, Dongbua Shuang was very distressed. When he mentioned that he was unable to form the first layer of the divine seal, Knight Yao Blade Pengshan laughed in surprise and said, "Since you already understand the structure of the divine seal, then just follow the secret techniques form with a single thought and try again and again. The more you try, the more you will naturally succeed. The divine seal is something created by the gods. As long as you can understand its structure, the more you try, the more you will succeed. However, if you don't understand it at all, the more you try, the more it will be useless." Knight Yao Blade Pengshan's words caused Dongbua Shuang to come to a sudden realization. Thus, Dongbua Shuang started to try. He tried thousands of times. Every day, he would spend most of his time trying to form the divine seal with a single thought. Tens of thousands of threads instantly formed a three-dimensional seal. Because he understood the divine seal, the moment the seal was formed, Dongbua Shuang understood that some of the threads had problems. He did not need to compare them one by one because the threads that had problems did not conform to the profound mystery of the flames of all creation. Because he understood the profound mystery, he instinctively made the threads conform to the profound mystery. Something is still not right. After trying tens of thousands of times, Dongbua Shuang already had an incomparably clear picture in his mind. Forming the three-dimensional seal gradually became an instinct. First, he would completely comprehend it, then practice makes perfect, and finally, it would become an instinct. Then, he would be able to form the divine seal with a single thought. Ying. At noon. With a thought, Dongbua Shuang gathered the heaven and earth energy into tens of thousands of threads, forming a three-dimensional seal. This demonic dragon divine seal was perfect. Success. Looking at the demonic dragon divine seal hovering in front of him, Dongbo Shuang revealed a look of joy. He hurriedly tried again, and another demonic dragon divine seal was formed. One by one, occasionally, there would be mistakes. He continued to form seals one by one. After the time taken to brew a cup of tea, more and more demonic dragon divine seals were formed. There were no more mistakes. The formation of the demonic dragon divine seal had become an instinct of his. He immediately entered the secret training room. Holding a grey dawn stone in his hand, he circulated the primordial heaven and earth energy contained within it. After the primordial heaven and earth energy entered his body, it directly transformed into numerous demonic dragon divine seals. These demonic dragon divine seals directly fused with his muscles, bones, heart, blood, and every other part of his body. Gradually, his body began to undergo minute changes. Every part of his body, from the inside to the outside, was fused with the demonic dragon divine seals, undergoing minute changes. If every part of his body evolved slightly, then after his entire body evolved, his strength would increase by 20%. His speed, toughness, recovery ability, and other aspects would also increase slightly. After spending 20 hours, his body finally evolved successfully. The first stage of the demonic dragon force is completed. Dongbo Shuang was somewhat excited. He immediately flipped open the demonic dragon force book and continued to read the second stage of the demonic dragon divine seal. Ying. A three-dimensional seal formed from over 20,000 threads floated above the book. Dongbo Shuang looked at it and pondered. So complicated. The more Dongbo Shuang looked at it, the more difficult it became. After studying the second stage of the demonic dragon divine seal for 5 days, Dongbo Shuang vaguely understood that his current attainment in the profound mystery of the flames of all creation was still relatively low. If he wanted to understand the second stage of the demonic dragon divine seal, he would not be able to do so in a year or so. If he could not even understand it, then it was even more impossible for him to form it with a single thought. When he tried to form it again and again, it was a mess every time. I'll give up for now. The demonic dragon divine seal is a god's incomparably exquisite use of the profound mystery of the flames of all creation. Dongbo Shuang thought to himself. My spear arts should also be more exquisite in making use of the profound mystery of the water and fire of all creation. Spear arts were abstruse beyond abstruse. If it was a god's seal, it could still be manifested through seals. But when it came to spear arts in battle, it would be very hard to directly express it. Even if it was a spear art created by some senior transcendents, it was still the experience and path of the seniors. If one were to observe the spear arts of the seniors when they were still very young, it would be very easy for one to be lured onto the wrong path. The path of transcendence had to be taken one step at a time, and one had to ponder on it step by step. After condensing the true meaning, one's own path would be stable enough. Only then would one look at the spear arts and saber arts of the other seniors and use them as reference. Only then would one's heart not be shaken. In history, there were even experts who had condensed their true meaning, but they were all led astray by the seniors. Furthermore, the seniors were not able to directly express their own comprehensions. They were all practicing the spear arts and saber arts. Just by observing the practice, one would at most be able to see the surface of it. If one were to walk on the wrong path because of this surface, it would be too late for regrets. Hence, one could only ponder on everything by oneself. Even if one was wrong, one would be able to understand where the mistake was and quickly correct it. Chapter 109. Immersed in his spear arts, time passed by quickly. The atmosphere of cultivation in the Xia capital was very good. There were many transcendents gathered here. Usually, when he was relaxing, Dongbo Shuang would go to the taverns with his friends to drink and eat rare delicacies in restaurants. Other than the transcendents from the Tranquil Sun province, Dongbo Shuang also got to know many other transcendents. Through chatting, he was able to understand more and more information. Although the Infernal Palace sent people to deliver books that recorded many general knowledge, there were still some things that were not in the books. In the blink of an eye, 5 months had passed. Heavy snow fell. Within the training grounds of Dongbu Shuiying's residence, there was a thick layer of snow. Dongbu Shuiying's body was like a dragon, wielding the black dragon spear, displaying his spear arts. At this moment, his mood was very good because of the snow. Back in his hometown, Azure River County, because it was located in the north, snow was very common. However, in the infernal world, the climate here was suitable for living. Only during winter would there be heavy snow. Meeting heavy snow was very rare. Suddenly, Dongbu Shuiying stopped, his eyes blazing. Water and fire can definitely coexist. My idea of this move will definitely come true. With the inspiration from the magic dragon divine seal, Dongbu Shuiying wanted to use the profound mysteries of water and fire more intricately. As he practiced his spear arts, the power of his spear arts had indeed increased by 10 to 20%. However, one day 3 months ago, when he was practicing, he suddenly felt, when the spear strikes, it is like a flood dragon coming out of the water, the rotational force is strange and unpredictable. However, the profound mystery of fire of myriad existences can explode in an instant. If I can gather this rotational force and use the profound mystery of fire to explode in an instant, then the power of this move will far surpass any of my moves. This move, first use the water of myriad existences, then use the fire of myriad existences. Instantaneous conversion. This was extremely difficult, but Dongbu Shuiying felt that he should be able to succeed. Because the water of myriad existences and the fire of myriad existences had many similarities. In the underground hall of the Black Wind Temple, before he became a transcendent, his water of myriad existences and fire of myriad existences had some similarities. 3 months had passed since he started trying, and he had been making progress, which filled him with confidence. Winning one more match in the transcendent battle of life and death was a small matter. What mattered the most was one's own strength. Therefore, even though the date of the transcendent battle of life and death was getting closer, he was still neither arrogant nor rash. Boom! Boom! The shaft of the black dragon spear was like a huge dragon, and under the control of Dongbu Shuiying's strength, the shaft of the black dragon spear formed an arc as it spun and stabbed forward. As it spun, the spear shaft was surrounded by a turbulent flow of water. At the last moment, the spear stabbed out, water and fire interchanged. The rotational force of the water would all converge and then explode in an instant. The moment the long spear stabbed out, flames erupted, its power was ferocious. The transformation between water and fire is not natural enough. The force of the water's rotation was not perfectly transferred into the explosive force of the fire. Dongbu Shuiying shook his head. It was snowing heavily. Dongbu Shuiying was practicing his spear technique on the training field. Buzz! It was not as violent as before. Instead, it was a low buzzing sound. The spear turned from a spiraling dragon to an explosive force, as though a dragon had shot out from the water and soared into the sky. The piercing force of the spear's rotation formed a spiraling wave visible to the naked eye. A finger-thick spiraling wave of air directly pierced through the heaven and earth energy that Dongbu Shuiying had gathered around him. I actually can't block it. Dongbu Shuiying immediately controlled the heaven and earth energy around him, forming layers of water to block it. This was just the airwave produced by a single stab. Furthermore, because it was just an attempt, Dongbu Shuiying did not use much strength. Usually, when he cultivated, he would be able to block the shockwaves by using the heaven and earth energy to block them. Even if some of the shockwaves hit the wall, it would not be a big deal. But this bizarre spiraling wave of air was extremely powerful, and its penetrative force was shocking as well. Dongbu Shuiying used the heaven and earth water energy to block it. The airwave still flew for over 100 meters before it was completely blocked. Good fella! Dongbu Shuiying exclaimed, its power is truly great. Weapons and secret techniques are not as important as one's realm in influencing one's strength. Dongbu Shuiying was extremely excited. He had succeeded. He had finally mastered this move that he had been painstakingly studying. Weapons were important, but secret techniques were even more important. But what was the true core of a transcendent? What was the key? It was the realm. To cultivate a secret technique to a profound level, one's realm had to be high enough. To cultivate battle chi further, one's realm had to be high enough. For example, to become a demigod, even the weakest demigod had condensed a true meaning. At the same time, the realm itself had an even greater influence on one's strength. For example, Eternal Wind Knight Qiu Qi Bai. In terms of body and battle chi, he was very ordinary. In terms of secret techniques, he could not even compare to the Bloodshed Tavern, Temple of the Earth God, or demonic faction. However, he was the undisputed number one on the Saint board and had even killed a demigod native from a transcendent world. He had even defeated a famous human demigod expert. It was because his realm was high enough. He had grasped the true meaning of space cleavage. When Dongbua Shuang killed Xiang Pangyun, he was at the most basic level of the realm of myriad existences. After that, he had spent 6 years in the underground. After the fusion of fire and water, the fire of myriad existences had improved. At the same time, he had comprehended the profound mystery of water of myriad existences. At this moment, his comprehension of the fusion of fire and water of myriad existences had deepened, and he had even created this killing technique. Let's go to the training room and try it out. Dongbua Shuang immediately headed to the training room. Only there could he display his full strength to the fullest. Within the training room, 10 fire crystal lamps were lit up. Dongbua Shuang held the black dragon spear in his hands. Hong, a faint red aura appeared on the surface of his body. His power bloodline had also erupted. Kill! Dongbua Shuang used all his strength. When it was still a low sound, the spear stabbed out like a water dragon. The powerful rotational force caused the spear's speed to become even faster. The rotational force naturally gathered at the tip of the spear. At the moment of perfect convergence, the extreme yin turned into extreme yang, and the spear seemed to have transformed into a flaming dragon. Its might was extremely shocking. When the spear tip stabbed out, it created a shockwave that was as thick as an arm. Evidently, after the strength of the shockwave increased, the vibrations in the air became much stronger as well. This shockwave that was as thick as an arm was shockingly powerful. The speed of the shockwave was extremely fast as well, and it directly smashed against the walls of the training room. Ripples appeared on the walls, dissipating the force of the shockwave. This move, in terms of ferocity, is at least 30% stronger than the extreme violent spear art that was executed using the profound mystery of fire of myriad existences. As for the strange rotational force, it should be at least 30% stronger than the water of myriad existences. Dongbua Shuang estimated. The spear arts of the past. The water of myriad existences was strange and soft, but it lacked power. The fire of myriad existences was extremely powerful, but it was too ferocious and clumsy. Right now, this move possessed the advantages of both. In fact, it was even stronger than both. Such a move would definitely cause Dongbua Shuaying's strength to double. This killing move, I shall call it. When Dongbua Shuang executed it, it was as though a flood dragon had transformed into a fire flood dragon. Water and fire flood dragon kill. After Dongbua Shuang comprehended the profound mysteries of heaven and earth, the first killing move he comprehended was created on the very first snowy day he arrived at the Xia capital of the infernal realm. Although it was still very simple when compared to the magic dragon divine seal, it was already an ingenious use of the profound mysteries. Furthermore, it was a fusion of two profound mysteries. It could be considered extraordinary. And, this move of mine can still be improved upon. After creating the move, Dongbua Shuang discovered it. I can make the fusion of water and fire even more perfect. The profound mysteries of heaven and earth contained everything. All profound mysteries belonged to the laws of heaven and earth. Thus, all sorts of profound mysteries could be fused together perfectly. Naturally, water and fire could be fused together perfectly as well, or even become one. Right now, Dongbua Shuang could only fuse the two together in a simpler manner. Within the Xia capital, in the taverns and restaurants, many places were discussing the same thing, the transcendent battle of life and death that was about to begin. Gung Qing, you actually came to the infernal realm? You haven't been here for almost 100 years. Ah, I heard that the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years is about to begin his transcendent battle of life and death. How could I miss such an event? No wonder, I knew it. But Gung Qing, how many matches do you think this Dongbush Shuang kid can win in the transcendent battle of life and death? It's hard to say. He's too young. I think he should be able to win 3 matches. Maybe 4 or 5. 6 matches would be very dangerous. Currently, in the Xia capital, many transcendents rarely met each other. Most of them would talk about Dongbush Shuang, the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years. His transcendent battle of life and death. The attraction was very big. Actually, even an ordinary transcendent battle of life and death would attract many people. After all, even transcendents like to join in on the fun. Night. In the back garden, Dongbush Shuang was drinking alone, looking at the bright moon in the sky. Currently, countless people in the Xia capital were looking forward to tomorrow. Because tomorrow would be Dongbush Shui Ying's transcendent battle of life and death. At that time, many mortals like the female housekeeper, Su Qin, would be there to watch. Tomorrow. Dongbush Shuang whispered to himself. Then he grinned, I hope it won't be too embarrassing. Chapter 110. Dragon Mountain Calendar Year 9637, January 18th, Morning. Qiu Qibai, Peng Shan, Qingling Shu, Dong Yu, Wu Kuei, Zi Che Gu Feng and the rest of the transcendents from Tranquil Sun Province arrived at Dongbush Shui Ying's residence. Brother Snow Eagle, why are you still so calm? Drinking alone? The sturdiest Ba Ming exclaimed in surprise. How am I calm? I'm more nervous. Dongbush Shuang laughed, if I didn't care about anything, I would have slept until now. Actually, to transcendents, sleep was not necessary. It was just that after sleeping, they could relax and recover their mental energy. Hence, many transcendents would sleep frequently. It doesn't matter if you're nervous or not. This transcendent battle of life and death cannot be avoided. Let's go, we will accompany you to the infernal palace's hall of life and death. Qiu Qibai said. Qingling Shu also said, Brother Snow Eagle, I won 2 rounds back then and lost on the 3rd round. However, I believe that you will definitely win at least 7 rounds. You're even stronger than Brother Chang Feng. Peng Shan also hurriedly said, Snow Eagle, Sister Ling Shu specially bet on you. She bet that you will definitely win at least 6 rounds. Bet? Dongbush Shuang looked at Qingling Shu in shock, Sister Ling Shu, you're still betting? Mages were usually very rational. Qingling Shu was a female transcendent mage, yet she was betting? Just playing, just playing. Qingling Shu purposely said shyly, occasionally betting is very interesting. I bet that you will win at least 6 rounds. You have to win at least 7 rounds before I can win. At least 7 rounds. I'm not confident. Dongbush Shuang said. There's no other way. The other payout rates are too low, and placing a single bet on one of the rounds is too risky. Hence, I bet on you winning at least 6 rounds. Qingling Shu looked at Dongbush Shuang in anticipation, Brother Snow Eagle, I believe that you can do it. The group of people chatted. It's about time. Let's go. Qiu Qibai said. And, let's go to the infernal palace. Everyone stood up and walked out of the hall. Dongbush Shuang turned to the female housekeeper, Su Qin, and said, leave a few guards in the residence today. Those who wish to watch the battle are free to do so. Thank you, Master. Su Qin immediately said excitedly. Let's go. After Dongbush Shuang and the other transcendents left the mansion, they immediately flew towards the infernal palace. Flying high up in the sky, Shaochen could see with a single glance that the closer he got to the infernal palace, the more ferocious the flow of people became. Countless people were rushing towards the infernal palace. I don't usually see so many people in the Xia capital. Dongbua Shuang looked down and exclaimed. There are many mortals. Peng Shan said, I'm afraid that more than half of the mortals in the Xia capital will rush to the Hall of Life and Death to watch this battle. To them, being able to witness a life and death battle between transcendents is already worth it. Their masters, whether they are transcendents or legend rankers, would normally allow their maids and servants to go out and watch the battle. Ziche Gufeng and the other transcendents all smiled. This was a rare event. The mortals who are able to live in the Xia capital are considered to be lucky. Many mortals in the outside world have never seen a transcendent before. But the mortals in the Xia capital are able to see transcendents frequently, and even watch the transcendent battle of life and death. Zone 2 evaluated. Dongbua Shuang nodded his head. The transcendent battle of life and death was usually held once every few years. If it was short, it would be once every 1 or 2 years. If it was long, it would be hard for it to exceed 5 years. It's just that Snow Eagle, you are the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years. Hence, the attraction is much greater. It is said that many transcendents from the outside world have come to the infernal palace. Because there are a lot of transcendents coming, many of them want to gather with their transcendents friends, so they will rush back. Qiu Qibai said, I reckon that 70 to 80% of the spectators this time are transcendents. During the conversation, Dongbua Shuang and the rest flew to the infernal palace. The infernal palace was located in the center of the Xia capital. It occupied a huge area and had many halls. Among them, the Hall of Life and Death was specially used for the transcendent battle of life and death. As transcendents, they could directly enter the Hall of Life and Death from the main entrance. What a huge battle arena! After Dongbua Shuang entered, he immediately saw the huge arena in the middle of the vast Hall of Life and Death. The huge arena was about 2 to 3 miles wide, and it was decorated with mountains. There were even streams flowing around it. The arena in the middle was only so big. The spectator area was even bigger. The eastern arena was extremely spacious, and only transcendents could enter. The western arena was for mortals to sit and watch. The mortals were densely packed, and the 3 to 4 miles wide arena was enough to accommodate over 1 million people. At the very least, the mortals in the Xia capital were able to sit down. Snow Eagle, follow me. Qiu Qibai led Dongbua Shuang, I will bring you to meet the faction head. Faction head? Dongbua Shuang immediately understood and followed behind. Because only transcendents were allowed to watch the battle from the east side, there were very few spectators. Most of them were on good terms with each other. Dongbua Shuang soon saw 2 figures sitting in front of him. Greetings faction head, Mountain Lord he. Qiu Qibai bowed slightly. Dongbua Shuang followed suit and bowed. It's Eternal Wind. The faction head glanced at Qiu Qibai before his gaze landed on Dongbua Shuang. His gaze was as calm as the sea. Dongbua Shuang felt an invisible pressure. Demigod rank 5, Si Kong Yang, Water Taoist faction head, condensed at True Deity Heart. One had to know that among the humans, natives of the transcendent world, and the beast race, there were only 4 demigods who could condense a true deity heart. His faction head, Si Kong Yang, was one of them. Si Kong Yang's entire body was like a sun, emitting light and heat, making it hard for others to look at him directly. And beside him was Mountain Lord He, who was publicly recognized as the #1 under the heavens. Mountain Lord He gave off a feeling that one could not see the end of the mountain range. It was distant, but it didn't make people feel too pressured. Dongbua Shuang. Faction head Si Kong Yang said, there are many demigods who came to spectate this time. They all want to see how many battles the youngest transcendent in 1,000 years can win. I'm also very curious. Dongbua Shuang will naturally do his best. Dongbua Shuang said. Go. Prepare well. You will have to enter the arena soon. Si Kong Yang said. Mountain Lord He didn't say anything, but he also smiled as he watched. Actually, to these high and mighty demigods, there was a limit to how much they valued these monstrous geniuses. This was because the lifespan of a demigod was 3,000 years. In these 3,000 years, there were still quite a few of these monstrous geniuses. But in reality, the majority of those who became demigods were transcendents who seemed to be low-key. No matter how monstrous they were at the beginning, the most they could say was that they had a high chance of entering the saint realm. As for demigods, that was too difficult. For example, Qiu Qi Bai was the number one on the saint rankings and had even defeated human demigods. His position was very high. Logically speaking, he didn't need to be so close to Dongbu Shuang. However, Qiu Qi Bai didn't care. He had a good relationship with the transcendents of the Tranquil Sun province, causing the 9 transcendents of the Tranquil Sun province to admire and respect Qiu Qi Bai. Although Qiu Qi Bai was currently at the peak of the saint realm, he already had the strength of a demigod. In the future, he would be regarded as the number one under the heavens. A large number of mortals entered the arena and sat down. Jing Qiu and a few familiar legend rankers also entered the arena and sat down. They were all sitting on the west side, so they couldn't see the transcendents in the east. There was a layer of invisible energy blocking their view. Sister Jing Qiu, Dongbu Shuang is from our Tranquil Sun province. You and him are both from the Azure River County. The legend rankers by the side said. N. Jing Qiu smiled. She was also very nervous. She was waiting for Dongbu Shuang to enter the arena below. Chapter 111. In the eastern region of the Hall of Life and Death, more and more transcendents arrived. Even demigods appeared. A bald, skinny old man walked slowly. Brother Chao. Faction head Si Kong Yang saw a skinny old man and immediately stood up. Although he was the faction head of the Water Daoist faction and one of the top 3 experts of the human race, Chao Qing was still a demigod. When he was weak, Chao Qing was already a demigod that could destroy the heavens and earth. Moreover, Chao Qing thought highly of him and even saved his life. Therefore, Si Kong Yang had always respected Chao Qing. Faction head. Chao Qing's wrinkled face cracked into a smile. He nodded slightly but did not walk over. Instead, he walked in another direction. Dongbu Shuang and the other 10 transcendents from the Tranquil Sun province were chatting. Suddenly, they saw vice-faction head Chao Qing and hurriedly stood up. Sit. Chao Qing laughed and his gaze landed on Dongbu Shuang. Kid, don't embarrass our Water Daoist faction. At least win the first 3 matches. Of course, it would be best if you win 8 or 9 matches. Yes. Dongbu Shuang replied. Chao Qing did not walk over. Instead, he continued walking away. In the corner of the eastern region, sat a hunchbacked old lady. This hunchbacked old lady was surrounded by a thin layer of blood-red mist. No transcendents dared to approach within 10 meters of her. However, old man Chao Qing walked over directly. The blood-red fog automatically made way for him, allowing old man Chao Qing to sit beside the hunchbacked old lady. Beauty Yi, you're here too. Old man Chao Qing smiled. A hunchbacked old lady full of wrinkles was called a beauty. It was indeed interesting. However, if one looked closely at the old lady's face, one could vaguely tell that she was very beautiful when she was young. She was ranked 10th on the demigod list, killing god Yi Mei, the leader of the Bloodshed Tavern, the number 1 assassin in the world. She was also the only one among the top 10 of the demigod list, the Temple of the Earth God and the Bloodshed Tavern. The ranking of the demigod list did not represent a person's strength. For example, Yi Mei. Her assassination and slaughter methods were extremely terrifying. Her direct combat strength was ranked 10th, but when it came to assassination, everyone in the world would tremble. Another example would be the Sea Deity Palace Master. Although he was ranked 8th on the demigod list, if they were to fight on the sea, he would be the undisputed number 1. Even if the top 3 demigods on the demigod list joined forces, they would not be able to do anything to the Sea God Palace Master in the ocean. Because everyone comprehended the nature of heaven and earth, and the paths they took were different. Because he wielded a divine artifact. Every half-deity had their own specialties. You old man, you're not coming either. Old Madame Yi laughed. This is our water Taoist faction's young genius, of course I have to come. Chao Qing proudly raised his head. Yes, the youngest. Old Madame Yi sighed and said, when I see young transcendents and feel their youthful auras, I sigh. We're all old. The group of good friends we knew when we were young either died early or died of old age. There aren't many left. Fortunately, there's still you, an old man who's older than me. You are not much different from me. You are the second oldest in the world. Old man Chao Qing said. You old man, are you purposely trying to anger me? Look at how proud you are now. When that young genius of your water Taoist faction loses early, let's see if you can still be proud then. Old Madame Yi sneered. Lose? He can at least win 6 matches. Chao Qing glared. You said it. Old Madame Ye's eyes lit up, let's make a bet. I bet that this brat won't win 6 matches. Let's bet then, who's afraid of who? An old man and old woman argued. However, the transcendents in the distance did not dare to come close because the older a demigod was, the more terrifying they were. These old fellows, no one knew their true strength. Even Mountain Lord He, faction head Si Kong Yang, and the others respected old man Chao Qing and old Madame Yi. Of course, these 2 old men and old women were the oldest humans. They did not include the beast race or the transcendent world natives. For the beast race and the transcendent world natives, because of their fleshly bodies, their lifespan was different from humans. Beside faction head Si Kong Yang and Mountain Lord He, another demigod walked over. This was a female demigod with an extremely stunning appearance. Dressed in white, she floated down. Although she was extremely beautiful, she had a pair of sword-like eyebrows. She carried a heroic aura. City Lord Bu, Si Kong Yang and Mountain Lord He were very polite. The person who came was the City Lord of the Cloud Fog City, one of the 6 big transcendent organizations. She was known as the most beautiful demigod, and even now, there were 2 demigods chasing after her. Si Kong Yang, you seem to be quite proud. City Lord Bu casually said after sitting down. However, a young genius does not necessarily mean that he is powerful. Since ancient times, there were many geniuses who became transcendents at a young age, but in the end, they all became mediocre. Who knows, this Dongbua Shuang of your water Taoist faction might be such a brat. He might not even be able to win 3 matches this time. City Lord Bu is right. Si Kong Yang immediately agreed. Mountain Lord He also nodded from the side. What a joke, who didn't know City Lord Bu's temper? City Lord Bu was indeed the most beautiful demigod, and was also one of the top experts in the demigod list. However, in terms of aggressiveness, no human demigod could match up to her. So boring. City Lord Bu casually picked up a jug of wine and casually sat down to drink. She looked down and waited for the transcendent battle of life and death to begin. Rumble, the doors of the Hall of Life and Death slowly closed. Immediately, the entire Hall of Life and Death quietened down. The tens of thousands of mortals in the western viewing area were also very quiet. They all looked down and watched the battle below. Snow Eagle, it's about to begin. Qiu Qibai, Peng Shan, Qingling Shu, Hai Ru Zhen, and the others all looked at Dongbua Shuang. This battle is the battle that you, Dongbua Shuang, will display in front of the entire human world's transcendence. Qiu Qibai said, moreover, the Infernal Palace will also evaluate your potential based on this battle. The Bloodshed Tavern will also evaluate your potential. If your potential is extremely high, even if someone wants to place a bounty on you, the Bloodshed Tavern will also offer a very high price. The Infernal Palace will also pay attention to you and will give you resources. A young transcendent doesn't mean that he will be powerful in the future. But the transcendents who are outstanding in the transcendent battle of life and death are not mediocre. Qiu Qibai encouraged. Dongbua Shuang grinned, I will try my best. Suddenly, dong! A loud sound resounded throughout the Hall of Life and Death. Dongbua Shuang already knew the rules of the transcendent battle of life and death. He knew that the sound of the drum meant that he was about to enter the battlefield. Everyone, I'll be entering first. Dongbua Shuang stood up, and with a flash, flames surrounded his body, he flew into the battlefield. The battlefield was originally covered by a formation, completely isolating it from the outside world. But this formation was also controlled by the people from the Infernal Palace. Thus, Dongbua Shuang easily passed through the formation and landed on the battlefield. In an instant, regardless of whether it was the Transcendents in the east or the mortals in the west, they all saw the black-robed young man in the battlefield. At this moment, the gazes of countless people in the Hall of Life and Death landed on the black-robed young man in the battlefield. Today, more than 70% of the human transcendents were present. There were a total of 8 demigods. Strictly speaking, this was the most exciting transcendent battle of life and death in the past 2,000 years. The spectators all had their own thoughts. Some wanted to see a pleasant surprise, while others wanted to see a joke. If they were to lose after winning 2 battles, it would indeed be a joke. They were all waiting to see what kind of strength this young transcendent called Dongbua Shuang could display. Dongbua Shuang, who was wearing an ordinary black robe, walked barefoot towards the weapon rack at the side. In the transcendent battle of life and death, it was forbidden to use any transcendent weapons other than storage treasures. This included combat boots, protective inner armor, clothes, etc., they were all forbidden. The transcendent battle of life and death relied on one's own strength. That was why Dongbua Shuang was only wearing an ordinary robe and barefoot. These weapons. Dongbua Shuang looked at the large number of weapons. Sabers, spears, rods, swords, lances, etc. There were even some unique weapons and hidden weapons. These weapons were only made of good materials. There was nothing special about them. Of course, the most basic requirement was to transmit energy perfectly. He could only choose these weapons for the transcendent battle of life and death. Hua! Dongbua Shuang waved his hand and the entire weapon rack was kept into his storage treasure. He would bring all of them with him first. He might need them during the battle. Dong! Another heavy drum beat sounded. Dongbua Shuang knew that this was the reminder for his opponent to enter the battlefield. He's here. The first battle. Dongbua Shuang used the heaven and earth energy to sense the entire battlefield. Chapter 112. Within a few miles of the battleground, there were undulating mountains and flowing streams. The scenery was extremely beautiful. Boom! A gigantic figure descended from the sky and landed on the battleground, crashing into a mountain. The impact force of over 100,000 Jin did not leave a single mark on the mountain. The mountain in the battleground was actually a special decoration created by the transcendent sorcerers. It wasn't a real mountain. The toughness of the mountain was something that even a sky realm transcendent would not be able to damage. Dongbua Shuang stared at the gigantic creature. Countless mortals on the western viewing platform exclaimed in shock. It was a lizard-type transcendent refiner organism. Its entire body was red in color and its body was about 15 meters long. Its pair of golden eyes stared at Dongbua Shuang. Dongbua Shuang revealed a faint smile. The opponents of the transcendent battle of life and death were all decided long ago. According to the rules, the transcendent battle of life and death would be fought 3 times consecutively. After the 3 battles, one could rest for 2 hours to recover one's battle chi and stamina. After that, one could continue fighting 3 more battles and rest for another 2 hours, before proceeding to the next round. Until the end of the battle. Many new transcendents were defeated in the first round. This was especially so for sorcerers. Most of them were weaker in one-on-one battles. It was already considered good if they could win 3 battles. According to the plan, the opponents for the first and second round would be transcendent refiner organisms. The third round would only be against transcendent natives. The further they went, the more unique and powerful their opponents would be. Roar! The huge red lizard immediately sprinted forward. Its heavy footsteps caused the ground to tremble. Dongbua Shuang flipped his hand and a black spear appeared in his hand. He casually shook the spear. The spear didn't have any runic patterns on it, but the strength of the spear was still transmitted perfectly. Who? In an instant, the scarlet lizard appeared beside Dongbua Shuang, as it used its huge claws to stomp down on Dongbua Shuang. This stomp caused the spectators to feel their hearts palpitating, not daring to breathe. However, Dongbua Shuang easily dodged the attack. Following which, his silhouette flickered as he evaded the attacks of the scarlet lizard. He had been dodging all this while, not even blocking, let alone counterattacking. The first opponent is really weak. Even an ordinary extraordinary knight would be able to defeat him easily. Dongbua Shuang did not have much experience fighting against transcendent opponents. Hence, he tried his best to experience every single battle to gain some experience. Scram! Dongbua Shuang made his move. Who? The spear arced through the air in a huge arc, as streams of water appeared around the spear. The scarlet lizard hurriedly used its claws to block. The moment the spear came into contact with the claws, the strange spinning force caused the spear to change its direction easily. The spear passed through the claws and pierced through the abdomen of the scarlet lizard. Following which, Dongbua Shuang suddenly exerted his strength. Upward slash. Boom! The scarlet lizard was immediately sent flying. At the instant it was sent flying, it panicked and tried to stabilize its body. However, Dongbua Shuang followed up with a whip. The giant scarlet lizard, which had just been sent flying, was unable to block in time. The spear turned into a blurry phantom and struck its body, sending it flying far away at high speed. It crashed into a mountain rock dozens of meters away, creating a loud sound. It tumbled and fell to the side, still staggering. It revealed a helpless expression, knowing that it had failed. Dong! A deep drum sound echoed throughout the entire Hall of Life and Death. An invisible force enveloped the scarlet lizard and sucked it out of the battlefield. The mortals watching the battle from the outside world were all excitedly discussing among themselves. Clearly, Shuang had easily sent his opponent flying the moment he did so. A black-robed young man sending a 10 meters long lizard flying. It was a shocking sight to behold. The first battle has ended. Dongbua Shuang was very calm. This transcendent refiner organism's strength is similar to mine. However, its techniques are too weak. His body was at the mid-phase of the sky realm. That giant lizard's strength was also at the mid-phase of the sky realm. However, in terms of battle techniques, it was far from Xiang Pangyun's level. Currently, Dongbua Shuaying's battle techniques were much higher than before. He could completely oppress Xiang Pangyun. Naturally, he could easily oppress a transcendent refiner organism like this. After 10 breaths of time. Who? Another figure descended from above. After landing, it occupied the highest peak of the battlefield. This was a scorpion-like transcendent refiner organism. It had a short body and a long scorpion tail. Its entire body was black, and it had sharp claws. Even the joints of its limbs were filled with spikes. Its entire body seemed to be filled with weapons. From the looks of it, it was much harder to deal with. This is my opponent for the second round. Many transcendent mages and a few weaker transcendent knights were defeated in this round. Dongbua Shuang walked on the ground barefooted. Step by step, he walked towards the black scorpion. Not all transcendents were able to reach the realm of myriad existences. Some were only able to step into the transcendent realm while being one with the world. These transcendents were much weaker. Thus, many of them were defeated in the second round. Hua hua hua, the stream flowed, as though a ribbon was coiling around the mountain. Dongbua Shuang walked on the water barefooted. He didn't need to use heaven and earth energy or do qi, but he was still able to walk on the water without sinking. It was as though he was walking on flat ground. Every step he took was filled with the beauty of nature. There was a formless rhythm to it. Just like that, he walked towards the black scorpion. The black scorpion stared at its opponent, cautiously waiting for an opportunity. Jing Qiu was amongst the crowd of mortals. She was looking at the huge battleground. Dongbo Shuang, who was dressed in black, walked on the water barefooted. Step by step, he walked towards the black scorpion. She only felt that he was so handsome. That kind of beauty of nature caused her heartbeat to quicken. Why do I feel that he's so powerful? Why do I feel that he's not ordinary when he walks? What do you know? That's because his steps are filled with the profound mystery of myriad existences. Clearly, he has comprehended the realm of myriad existences. Not only can he use it on his spear techniques, even his ordinary actions can trigger the profound mystery of heaven and earth. Just a casual raise of his hand or a kick would have a terrifying might. Immediately, a legend ranker explained. The other legend rankers beside him suddenly understood. The legend rankers could barely see through the profound mystery of heaven and earth. As for the weaker mortals, they were purely here to enjoy the show. This kind of battle between transcendents was simply too cool and shocking. Eastern Europe's snow eagle walked to the highest point of the small hill in the battleground. When the black scorpion got close enough to Dongbo Shuang, it finally launched its attack. Xiao! As fast as lightning, the black scorpion's scorpion tail moved in a strange and unpredictable manner. In an instant, it arrived in front of Dongbo Shuang. The black spear in Dongbo Shuang's hand easily blocked the scorpion's attack. Since the start of the battle, Dongbo Shuang had been using the profound mystery of the water of myriad existences. This was because it was more suitable for defense. Regardless of how weak the opponent was, it was better to be careful. The black scorpion attacked crazily. The scorpion's tail, hooves, and spikes covered the sky as it attacked crazily. Dongbo Shuang had been defending against the scorpion's attacks. His spear was surrounded by a faint stream of water. All of the scorpion's attacks were unable to get within 2 meters of Dongbo Shuang. His combat techniques are average, but his body structure is superior. Some transcendent knights who have only reached the state of one with the world would easily fall. As for transcendent sorcerers, they aren't good at close combat, and they can't use any special equipment. They can only use the simplest wand, which is why they are easily defeated. Dongbo Shuang observed the battle. The spear that he was using to block the scorpion's attack suddenly spun. The spear turned into a furious stab, which was both strange and fast. Under the strange force, the trajectory of Dongbo Shuang's spear was twisted in an arc. It was very difficult to defend against it, let alone at close range. The black scorpion didn't even have the time to block the attack, and it was stabbed at the joint between its hooves and body. With a bang, the black scorpion was sent rolling on the ground. Fast and strange enough. Some of the transcendents who were watching from the east were astonished. The usage of the water of metamorphosis on the spear was indeed strange and unfathomable. Transcendent refiner organisms might be able to defend against a brutal attack with their bodies, but against such a strange technique, even a true transcendent knight would be at a disadvantage. But even a true transcendent knight would be at a disadvantage against such a strange technique, let alone a transcendent refiner organism. Shuang easily pierced its vital parts, causing it to roll for more than 10 meters before coming to a stop. Following a dong sound of a drum, the huge scorpion flew up and was carried away by an invisible force from the battlefield. The third battle is about to begin. Dongbo Shuang knew the danger. The transcendent world's indigenous people will appear. Only by killing the transcendent world's indigenous people will I be able to win. And that transcendent world's indigenous people will also want to kill me. What was a life and death battle? From the third battle onwards, the true meaning of life and death would come. Both sides would fight with their lives on the line. Of course, at the crucial moment when a human was about to be killed, the demigods who were in charge of rescuing the human would step in. Usually, they would be able to save the human, and those who couldn't could only die in the battlefield. Chapter 113. Countless mortals in the Western spectator stands were filled with anticipation. They were here to spectate the battle. What they were looking forward to the most was the battle between human transcendence and native transcendence. This Dongbo Shui Ying's spear arts are very proficient, and his profound mystery of the water of myriad creations is impenetrable. He should be able to win the third match. That's hard to say. Native transcendents have different innate talents. Who knows, he might meet someone who can counter Dongbo Shuang. That's right. That depends on luck. The transcendents were also observing and discussing. Their eyes were very sharp. Being stared at by hundreds of thousands of mortals and half of the human transcendents, Dongbo Shuang stood on the peak of a small mountain and calmly sensed the movements around him. To him, there was no need to care about others. The transcendent battle of life and death was a rare opportunity for him to accumulate experience. Who? A human figure descended from the sky and landed on the battlefield. When he landed on the ground, a formless baleful aura spread out. And then, Dongbo Shuang furrowed his brows as he stared at his opponent who was 500 meters away. This native transcendent was in human form. He was about 3 meters tall and was rather skinny. He wore loose white clothes and carried 2 sabers on his back. However, his skin was green in color, and his eyes were fiery red. Even his hair was red in color. Native transcendent. Dongbo Shuang did not dare to be careless. What was a native transcendent? It was a life form that was naturally born in large and small transcendent worlds. Just like the primordial life forms that were born in the earliest period of the material world. Primordial life forms were born from the heavens and earth, and each of them had unimaginable strength and methods. The strongest among them had strength comparable to gods. The material world was too perfect. But the laws of transcendent worlds were even simpler. Thus, the life forms born from the heavens and earth were much weaker. The strongest native life form born from large transcendent worlds was only a demigod. And the strongest native life form born from small transcendent worlds was only a saint. In other words, native transcendents were equivalent to weakened primordial life forms. They had many innate talents and methods, so they must not be underestimated. Human. The green-skinned transcendent native stared at Dongbo Shuang from afar. His fiery red eyes were flashing with lightning, and the corners of his mouth curled upwards in a mocking smile. Powerful existences among you have captured me, tortured me, and now you're even using me to train yourself. But sometimes, the results are different from what you expect. You will die by my hands, and I will be free. But I think you'll die. I, Dongbo Shuang, will be the first transcendent native to die in my hands. Standing on top of the mountain, Dongbo Shuang held a spear in his hand and said calmly. Is that so? The green-skinned transcendent native let out a cold smile as he drew out 2 sabers from his back. He wore loose white clothes and held a saber with both hands. He was also barefoot. The only difference was that his feet were big and green. So, in an instant, he moved. Lightning appeared around his body, and his entire body was like a bolt of lightning. He moved in a zigzag pattern and instantly closed in. Both of them were originally 500 meters apart, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Dongbo Shuang. At the same time, his 2 sabers slashed towards Dongbo Shuang. So fast. Dongbo Shuang was shocked, and he immediately swung his spear in a circle, enveloping the area in front of him. Who? The green-skinned transcendent native twisted his body, and in an instant, he appeared beside Dongbo Shuang. At the same time, he slashed his sabers towards Dongbo Shuang again. Dongbo Shuang turned his spear, and turned to the side, enveloping a large area as well. Water swirled around the spear. It was able to defend against all attacks. Shwa shwa shwa. In the eyes of the mortals, the green-skinned transcendent native who was 3 meters tall seemed to have transformed into tens of figures, surrounding Dongbo Shuang and slashing at him madly. As for Dongbo Shuang, he stood at his original position, and only relied on his spear to defend. In just a breath's time, the transcendent native had retreated 200 meters away. Countless mortals held their breaths. It was too fast, and they could only see a few shadows flashing by. But these mortals didn't know that the transcendent native and Dongbu Shuiying's weapons had not even touched each other from the start to the end. So fast. Dongbu Shuiying heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was speechless. This transcendent native's cultivation realm is very ordinary, and his saber technique is also very rough. My spear technique is much more profound than his, but his speed is extremely fast. Looking at the lightning around his body when he moves, his innate talent should be lightning, and his forte should be speed. With such speed, he has completely grasped the initiative, and I can't even touch him. In terms of instantaneous explosive speed and changing direction speed, his speed was 2 times that of Dongbu Shuiying. 2 times difference in speed. It was even more exaggerated than 2 times difference in strength. The other party would have absolute control over the situation. What did that mean? It meant that he was able to surround and attack Dongbu Shuiying single-handedly with a very rough saber technique. Your defense is pretty strong. The green-skinned transcendent native laughed coldly. From the start to the end, my weapon did not even touch your weapon, and yet you are able to defend so perfectly. What if I touch it? Dongbu Shuiying's expression changed slightly. The moment they collided, his spear would definitely be affected. Haha, despair. Die in despair. The green-skinned transcendent native's body flickered with lightning. His speed was terrifyingly fast, and once again, he appeared in front of Dongbu Shuiying. His 2 sabers slashed towards Dongbu Shuiying. Dang, their weapons clashed for the first time. Dongbu Shuiying tried his best to block with his spear, and a whirlpool of water appeared around him. But the snow-white saber slashed over again and again. It was too fast. It was obvious that Dongbu Shuiying was having a hard time defending against his spear. Under the continuous clashing of weapons, Dongbu Shuiying's spear was getting more and more strenuous. The transcendent native was also getting more and more expectant. This is the moment. At the instant when their weapons clashed, the spear in Dongbu Shuiying's hand moved like a python. The transcendent native felt his saber being stuck to the spear's body. A strange rotating force guided his saber, and the spear was like a dragon coming out of its cave, piercing towards Dongbu Shuiying in an instant. In terms of physical speed, Dongbu Shuiying was far inferior to him. But the speed of his weapon was much faster. No! The transcendent native hurriedly dodged with all his might. Pooh! The spear instantly pierced into his shoulder, creating a bloody hole. Following which, the transcendent native retreated explosively, and Dongbu Shuiying's spear didn't have time to attack a second time. You actually managed to escape. Dongbu Shuiying shook his head. You did it on purpose. You are purposely acting weak. The transcendent native roared. With such a strange and unpredictable spear art, how was it possible for him to be suppressed by him? He was purposely acting weak, allowing Dongbu Shuiying to attack freely, and then waiting for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack like a venomous snake. Your speed is really fast. You are even able to avoid being hit in the vitals. Dongbu Shuiying stared at the transcendent native's shoulder. The bloody hole on his shoulder was slowly recovering, and there was even dark green blood flowing out. Is that all you have? Dongbu Shuiying stared at him. The green-skinned transcendent native's face turned cold. He had also realized that his opponent's spear art was too strange and unpredictable. It would be too difficult for him to win. Relying on your innate talent, you possess frightening speed. It's a pity that your blade art is too crude. It can't even be compared to ordinary legend rankers. Dongbu Shuiying shook his head. This transcendent native's realm was too low. His blade art was too crude, and he didn't even have the one with the world, let alone the realm of myriad existences. It was truly a waste of his frightening speed. However, from this, one could see the threat of these transcendent natives. As long as their realms were able to catch up, they would become extremely terrifying. Since you don't have any powerful techniques, this battle can end here. Dongbu Shuiying said. Rumble. The surrounding 700 to 800 meters was filled with surging waves. Actually, the entire battlefield's diameter was only 3 to 4 kilometers. At this moment, this enormous whirlpool of water had completely enveloped the entire battlefield. Wah! This, countless mortals stared with their eyes wide open. The enormous battlefield had instantly transformed into an enormous whirlpool of water. In the center of the whirlpool was the black-robed young man. That black-robed young man was like a deity of the water. The whirlpool was extremely ferocious. Within it, there were even strange undercurrents. The whirlpool revolved unceasingly. The green-skinned transcendent native's expression changed greatly as he stood within the whirlpool. The undercurrents within the whirlpool were constantly changing, causing yin and yang to fluctuate. Can you still escape? Dongbua Shuang instantly turned into a phantom as he rushed over. Escape, escape! The green-skinned transcendent native fled with all his might. However, the surging whirlpool of water was too unbearable. If it was just the pressure, he wouldn't have cared. However, the undercurrents were too unbearable. Actually, just the change in the direction of the pressure was enough to cause this transcendent native who didn't possess the perfect as one to suffer a huge loss. Not to mention the fact that Dongbua Shuang had fused the profound mysteries of water and fire of myriad existences together. Within the gentleness, there was a ferocity, and within the ferocity, there was a gentleness. The undercurrents within the whirlpool were endless. Even a human transcendent with a higher cultivation would be at a disadvantage, let alone a transcendent native with a lower cultivation. He staggered as he ran, and he could only unleash 30 to 40% of his original speed. Most importantly, he couldn't even grasp the accuracy of his movements. Every step he took might be too far, too close, or too far off. No! The green-skinned transcendent native turned his head to look behind him. His fiery red eyes were wide open as he brandished his saber in an attempt to block. Pooh! The spear was like a dragon as it instantly pierced into the space between his eyebrows. It only pierced a little before it was pulled out. There was a finger-sized hole in the space between his eyebrows. His brain had already been completely destroyed and turned into mush. The vitality of a transcendent native was extremely strong. Usually, only by beheading, piercing through the heart, or piercing through the brain would they die. As for those who had attained the undying body, they were even more terrifying. Countless mortals looked at the surging waves in the huge battlefield below. The black-robed young man who was treading on the waves stood there. Beside him was the corpse of a 3-meter-tall green-skinned native transcendent native. At first, there was complete silence. Following that, there was an excited cheer. Jing Qiu was also cheering excitedly as she watched. The first round has ended. Rest for 2 hours before the second round begins. A sonorous voice resounded throughout the entire Hall of Life and Death. The endless waves dissipated. On the other hand, Dongbua Shuang walked towards an open door at the corner of the battlefield. Evidently, he was going to rest for 2 hours before preparing for the second round. Chapter 114. Hong Long Long. The doors of the Hall of Life and Death slowly opened. Because there were 2 hours to rest, the doors would naturally open during the break, allowing people to take the chance to walk around and return to the Hall of Life and Death when the time was right. Countless mortals watched with their blood boiling, feeling incomparably excited. On the other hand, the spectators in the east were either in groups of 2s or 3s, or in groups of 8 or 10. The transcendents were chatting with each other and were much calmer. To them, this was just a show to watch, and at the same time, a reunion with old friends that they hadn't seen for many years. Win 3 rounds. So what if that was the big deal? It was too ordinary. To a mage, passing 3 rounds might be praiseworthy, because mages were at a disadvantage in a one-on-one battle without being able to use any transcendent equipment. But transcendent knights were experts in close combat. As long as they had reached the realm of myriad existences and had rich combat experience, it would be a joke if they could not pass the first 3 rounds. Passing was considered normal performance. Winning 4 or 5 rounds was considered impressive. Winning 6 rounds was considered impressive. Vice head Chao Qing and Qiu Qi Bai were also impressive back then. They were experts in combat and had won 6 rounds. Without awakening their primordial bloodline and having special talents, they could only rely on their own cultivation level and combat experience to win 6 rounds. It was definitely worthy of admiration. As for those who won 7, 8, or 9 rounds, they all had the special talents of the primordial bloodline. For example, Dan Qingyan in the recent 10,000 years. Her primordial bloodline was a special blood talent. When she ignited her blood, her speed and strength would increase exponentially. Even her body was close to being undying. Back then, she relied on her cultivation level and combat experience to win 6 rounds. After that, she activated her talent, causing her strength to increase exponentially. Her body was also close to being undying, winning 7, 8, and 9 rounds consecutively. Another example was the Purgatory Knight Jieli, who had the most victories in the history of the Xia people. His primordial bloodline talent was even more mystical. As a mortal, he could already control flames, and the temperature of the flames was extremely high. After becoming a transcendent, he combined the profound mysteries of myriad existences and Do Qi. His primordial bloodline talent turned into a terrifying flame. It was called the Purgatory Flame by the Transcendents. Jieli was also called the Purgatory Knight. The Purgatory Flame's temperature alone could burn a Sky Peak expert to death. Under the burning of the Purgatory Flame, even if one's body was strong enough to withstand the heat, how painful would it be? Moreover, the pressure from the Purgatory Flame was also extremely strong. The opponent might not even be able to display half of their strength. His own cultivation level was also very high. With the help of his innate talent, he finally achieved the unimaginable achievement of 11 matches. To this day, there was not a second person in the entire Xia people who could achieve this. So, to be able to achieve such a high score in the transcendent battle of life and death, one had to have a high cultivation realm and battle experience, but the other was the primordial bloodline talent. Dongbo Shuiying's innate talent was only the ability to double one's strength. Compared to all the other innate talents, it was one of the most unremarkable. Therefore, now that Dongbo Shuiying had only won 3 matches, it was normal for the Transcendents to be calm and chatting casually with each other. In one of the side gardens of the Hall of Life and Death, Dongbo Shuiying was holding a flat wine flask. The flask was filled with the spiritual liquid of the Stone of Oceanic Boundary. He sat in the garden and looked at the flowers and plants. Because it was winter, there were only a few white flowers and some plants with strong vitality left in the garden. Goo goo. He casually drank a mouthful of the spiritual liquid of the Stone of Oceanic Boundary. This spiritual liquid had the effect of nourishing one's battle chi and soul. After drinking it, he felt very comfortable. The first 3 matches weren't that difficult. It's just that the Transcendent Native's innate talent is a little special. Dongbo Shuiying praised. His speed is actually twice as fast as mine. Countless Transcendents would choose between having their strength doubled or their speed doubled. Most likely, 99% of them would choose to double their speed. My primordial bloodline talent is indeed a very ordinary type of innate talent. Dongbo Shuiying laughed at himself. Regardless of whether it was the Dragon Mountain Manor head Yi Hong or Qiu Qi Bai and the rest, when they knew that Dongbo Shuiying's primordial bloodline talent was merely strength, they didn't care. However, when I was weak, my primordial bloodline had helped me a lot. If not for my primordial bloodline, I would have died in the hands of Xiang Pangyun long ago. Dongbo Shuiying didn't care about the ordinary nature of his primordial bloodline. After all, as a transcendent expert, the higher one's cultivation level was, the more important and fundamental, everything else was secondary. Drinking the spiritual liquid of the Stone of Oceanic Boundary, Dongbo Shuiying became more clear-headed. He recalled the previous 3 matches and thought about how he performed during the battles, absorbing the experience. The second round will be the most difficult. Based on the rules set by the Infernal Palace, the opponent for the 4th round will be a Battle Chi clone. The opponent for the 5th round will still be a lower Transcendent Native. And the opponent for the 6th round will be a middle transcendent native. Dongbua Shuang thought to himself. Battle Chi clone. After becoming a saint expert, one would be able to do it. The transcendent battle chi of a saint expert would be able to condense into a human form and transform freely. Furthermore, the soul of a saint expert would be even stronger, allowing them to separate a portion of their soul into the battle chi clone. This way, the battle chi clone would be able to move independently and display a relatively strong strength. Normally, when going on an adventure, saint experts would like to use their battle chi clone to explore unknown areas. Even if they met with a huge danger and the battle chi clone died, a portion of their soul would be destroyed. At most, a saint expert would suffer a huge loss of vitality, but they would be able to recover after some rest. If they recklessly charged forward, it would be very easy for them to lose their lives. The strength of the battle chi clone depended on the amount of transcendent battle chi in the clone and how many souls were attached to it. Lower transcendent native, middle transcendent native, upper transcendent native. This was how humans categorized the natives of the transcendent world. These natives of the transcendent world were equivalent to weakened primordial life forms. They all had their own strange innate abilities. According to the uniqueness and threat of their innate abilities, humans categorized them as lower, middle, and upper. Actually, this categorization was learned from the abyss demons. The abyss demons were categorized as lower, middle, and upper. In terms of threat, the abyss demons were much more terrifying than the transcendent natives. After all, they were the terrifying life forms of the dark abyss. Of course, just like the transcendent native that Dongbua Shuang fought against in the 3rd round, his speed was twice that of an expert of the same level, yet he was only categorized as a lower transcendent native. A middle transcendent native was extremely terrifying. A upper transcendent native was extremely rare. It was rare for the Xia people to capture an upper transcendent native. After they were captured, they would be kept in captivity by demigod transcendent mages for research. It was impossible for them to be used in the transcendent battle of life and death. After all, there were many transcendent mages who researched on bloodlines and fleshly bodies. For example, Si Lianghong, a mortal from Azure River County, specialized in researching on bloodlines and fleshly bodies. 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. The Hall of Life and Death once again rumbled as it closed. Countless mortals had already returned to the Hall of Life and Death. Every one of them was filled with excitement and anticipation. This was because the following battles would be even more exciting, and the opponents would be even more unique. Within the battlefield, Dongbua Shuang stood alone, silently waiting for his opponent. Dong! A thunderous sound resounded throughout the entire Hall of Life and Death. Everyone quietened down. Hua! A ray of light descended and landed on a mountain rock. It was a handsome and unruly white-robed man with a divine sword on his back. His entire body was faintly glowing. It was obvious that he did not have a body of flesh and blood, but a body formed from Do Qi. Dongbua Shuang looked at the white-robed man in front of him in shock. Elder Gong Liang. Although the white-robed man in front of him was a body formed from Do Qi, he could tell with a single glance that he was Elder Gong Liang Yuan, the one who had led him into the infernal world. Hee hee. The white-robed handsome man rubbed his nose and laughed helplessly. There's no choice. Your opponent in the 4th round is me. He had already released the 1st chapter, and the 2nd chapter would be released soon. Chapter 115. The handsome white-robed Gong Liang Yuan said helplessly, I have just become a martial saint not long ago and my abilities are still weak. My Do Qi doppelganger can test your strength. Brother Dongbua, although I really want to help you, there are so many transcendents staring at you. There are even demigods with incredible abilities. I don't dare to go easy on you. Elder Gong Liang, don't stand on ceremony. Dongbua Shuang said. I will try my best to stop you and defeat you. Gong Liang Yuan said, if you can't even defeat this Qi clone, you will be in danger of dying in the 5th and 6th matches. Understood. Dongbua Shuang nodded. Come. Gong Liang Yuan stood there. Shuang was cautiously staring at the distant elder Gong Liang Yuan, whose skin was covered in flowing light. He thought to himself, Elder Gong Liang Yuan always carries a deity sword on his back. If it isn't a quirk, then it should be related to the secret technique he cultivates. Back when he was in the Water Daoist faction's secret arts pavilion, although he had chosen that magic dragon art, in the end, he had already browsed through a large number of high-grade and top-grade secret Do Chi techniques. Although he didn't want to learn them for the time being, he could still accumulate some experience and broaden his horizons by reading more. Therefore, he knew of many special secret techniques that required one to carry a weapon at all times. In addition, he had chatted with many transcendents over the past half a year and learned some common knowledge. The more one carried a weapon, the more careful they had to be. Boom! Dongbua Shuang willed. Instantly, the power of the heaven and earth water in the battlefield surged, forming endless waves. The surging waves engulfed an area of 3 to 4 li in the battlefield, forming a huge whirlpool. Gong Liang Yuan, who was also in the middle of the whirlpool, frowned. He then smiled and said, Brother Dongbua, you have just become a transcendent, but the profound mystery of the water of creation is quite interesting. Although he said that, there was a formless wind energy surrounding him, easily blocking all the water currents. In terms of cultivation level, he was higher than Dongbua Shuang. Brother Dongbua, make your move. If you just stand there like an idiot, you won't be able to win. Gong Liang Yuan stood there, waiting for Dongbua Shuang to make his move. Alright. Dongbua Shuang wanted to stay still and wait for the other party to move so that he could find some clues. But according to the rules, he could only win if he defeated his opponent. Whoosh! Dongbua Shuang walked on the water. When he moved, he was like a bolt of lightning. In just a flash, he had already closed in on Gong Liang Yuan. Strangely, Gong Liang Yuan, who was originally standing there, suddenly grabbed the hilt of the divine sword on his back with his right hand. It was as if his right hand had been holding the hilt for a very long time. But as she approached him, his hands were still relaxed, but strangely, his right hand was on the hilt of his sword, and time seemed to slow down. Clang! It was the sound of a divine sword being unsheathed. What followed was a dazzling cold sword light with a strong wind current. The sword light was extremely fast and had already arrived in front of him. Dang! Dongbua Shuaying's face fell. He immediately used the black spear in his hand to block the incoming attack. At the same time, he quickly retreated. Severing Wind 15 Swords. The secret technique that Elder Gong Liang Yuan was practicing was a top-grade secret technique, Severing Wind 15 Swords. This secret technique was suitable for transcendents who were proficient in the profound mystery of all things wind. Furthermore, it was suitable for using swords. Dongbua Shuang had seen this secret technique before in the secret technique pavilion. Normally, some secret techniques were proficient in defense, while others were proficient in offense. Even those that were proficient in defense would usually have some offensive capabilities. But the Severing Wind 15 Swords was an extreme secret technique that was purely used for offense. It did not have any effect in terms of defense, but its offensive capabilities were extremely terrifying. Practicing this secret technique required one to constantly nurture the divine sword. Furthermore, when the sword was unsheathed, each strike would be faster than the previous one using the power of the wind. Just like the stacking of waves, the power of the sword would continuously increase, and the requirement for mastery of the profound mystery of all things wind would become higher and higher. Only when one reached full mastery would he be able to perform all 15 swords. Of course, Elder Gong Liang Yuan had just entered the Saint Realm, so it was impossible for him to reach the level of 15 swords. But even if he could perform 5 or 6 swords, it would still be very terrifying. Facing such a secret technique, he had to run. He could not allow the opponent to unleash all his swords in one go. As long as he could stop the opponent's swords temporarily, the opponent would have to start from the very first sword in order to execute this secret technique. The stacking of swords was something that had to be executed continuously without stopping. You won't be able to escape, Brother Dongbua. Gong Liang Yuan's voice rang out, and at the same time, a strong gust of wind appeared around Dongbo Shuang, obstructing Dongbo Shuaying's movements. While Dongbo Shuang was retreating, Gong Liang Yuan had already unleashed 2 more swords in the air. By the 4th sword, it was already right in front of Dongbo Shuaying's eyes. There was no way to dodge. Since there was no way to dodge, then he would have to face it head-on. Facing the severing wind 15 swords, using offense against offense was also a method. He would try his best to destroy the opponent's stacking of swords. Dang! The spear in Dongbo Shuaying's hand turned into a blazing flame, ferociously stabbing towards his opponent. The 2 swords clashed together, and at the instant of impact, the sword retracted nimbly using the rebound force. Following that, it unleashed an even more terrifying 5th sword. The gust of wind brought about by this sword was already very small, but the sword light itself was much more condensed and faster. The earlier clash between the 2 weapons was very weak. This caused Dongbo Shuang to feel very uncomfortable. He had clearly unleashed a ferocious attack, but his opponent had retracted it with just a single touch. Furthermore, it was even faster than before. This caused him to feel the pressure of being suppressed in terms of techniques. This Gong Liang Yuan might not be comparable to Dongbo Shuang when he was a new transcendent, but he had been cultivating for many years. Furthermore, the fact that he was able to step into the Saint Realm meant that he was already very powerful. Under normal circumstances, only 1 out of 10 Sky Realm transcendents would be able to step into the Saint Realm. Fortunately, Dongbo Shuang already knew the logic behind the fire of creation. The profound mystery of fire of creation contained a soft force. With a twist of his spear, the profound mystery of fire of creation easily changed into the profound mystery of water of creation. He immediately retracted his spear and reduced the radius of his defense. Pooh! The spear managed to block the 5th sword by a hair's breadth. The divine sword was retracted upon contact, followed by the even faster 6th sword. This sword was so fast that Dongbo Shuaying's eyes turned blurry. He could only grit his teeth and try his best to block it. He believed in the defensive capabilities of his spear art with the profound mystery of water of creation. Hua, the spear turned into a circle, and streams of water swirled around it. Boom! This sword was no longer as light as it was in the past. Instead, the accumulated power of each sword was unleashed. To be honest, the speed of the Dochi doppelganger was far inferior to that lightning transcendent native. However, by the time the 6th sword was unleashed, the speed of the sword art was already so fast that Dongbo Shuang could only rely on his instincts to block it. Furthermore, the might of the attack was even more terrifying. Dongbo Shuang only felt an intense impact on his spear. He hurriedly spun his spear, trying his best to deflect the impact. However, the impact still caused the spear shaft to fly backwards, smashing onto Dongbo Shuaying's body. Pooh! Dongbo Shuang was sent flying backwards, and at the same time, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Although he was sent flying backwards, Dongbo Shuang was still extremely excited. He blocked it. If he didn't block it, that sword would have landed on his body, and he would have lost an arm or leg. He might not lose his life in the 4th round, but if he was heavily injured, it would mean that he would lose. Following Dongbo Shuang, he landed on the water surface and looked at Gong Liang Yuan. He actually didn't chase after him. While he was sent flying backwards, Dongbo Shuang was still facing his opponent, preparing to defend at any moment. Logically speaking, when he was sent flying, it was definitely a good opportunity for him to attack. And Dongbo Shuang discovered that the white-robed Gong Liang Yuan was standing there. His skin had turned transparent, and the flowing light became more and more obvious. Old brother Dongbo, congratulations. You won. It's a pity that I can only use the most ordinary sword provided by the Infernal Palace. Gong Liang Yuan looked at the sword in his hand. Without a long period of mental nourishment, the power I can unleash is much weaker. I can only unleash 6 swords at most. With his true strength, he could unleash 8 swords. The Severing Wind 15 swords could be considered a small success. Elder Gong Liang, I was already having a hard time just now. Why didn't you continue to attack? Dongbui Shuang asked. The amount of transcendent Do Qi in this avatar of mine is also not much. It is only enough for me to unleash the Severing Wind 6 swords once. Gong Liang Yuan laughed. The Severing Wind 15 swords consumed a lot of Do Qi. Currently, the amount of Do Qi in his avatar was too little. He could only unleash 1 or 2 swords of Severing Wind 6 swords. It was not a threat to Dongbui Shuang at all. I really didn't expect that you would be able to block my Severing Wind 6 swords when you are only at the first level of Myriad Realm. Gong Liang Yuan laughed. Chapter 116. With that, Gong Liang Yuan's almost transparent body soared into the sky and flew away. Dong, the sound of a drum resounded throughout the Hall of Life and Death. Countless mortals understood that the fourth match was considered a victory. Actually, many mortals could not understand this match. Because the Do Qi doppelganger had only used a few extremely fast swords. Mortals could not even see it clearly. Furthermore, Dongbui Shuang was sent flying while vomiting blood. How did he win? The mortals did not think too much about it. They were here to watch an exciting battle between transcendents. If they could not understand, they could only blame themselves for not being knowledgeable enough. Comprehending myriad existences at the first level was able to block the Severing Wind 15 swords. Interesting. However, it is impossible for him to win the sixth match just by relying on his unpredictability and defense. The transcendents who were spectating from the east became slightly interested, because they felt that Shui Ying's path was about to come to a halt. Comprehending the nature of heaven and earth, reaching the realm of myriad existences. Nature of heaven and earth, the transformation of myriad existences, endless profound mysteries. After stepping into the realm of myriad existences, along with the deepening of one's comprehension, one's ability to control the energy of heaven and earth would undergo a qualitative transformation. According to this qualitative transformation, the realm of myriad existences was divided into 3 levels. This also represented the level of one's comprehension of heaven and earth. Extremely few legend rankers, like the top 3 in the Dragon Mountain book, were monsters who had comprehended the second level of myriad existences. Normally, once one stepped into the second level of myriad existences, they would be able to quickly break through to become transcendents. There were also those who broke through to become transcendents. Their soul would undergo a qualitative transformation, allowing them to comprehend the nature of heaven and earth, reaching the second level of myriad existences. In short, to rely on one's own comprehension to win the sixth match, one would normally have to reach the second level of myriad existences. Breaking through to the next realm would become increasingly difficult. The third level of myriad existences was rare even amongst the sky realm transcendents. Normally, once one reached this level, one would have hope of breaking through to the saint realm. Above that would be the condensation of true meaning. Only those who could condense true meaning could be considered as true experts amongst the saint realm. The pressure is huge. Shuang could feel the pressure from the battle. My comprehension of the realms is still too low. During the 6 years I spent in the underground Great Hall, my understanding of the profound mysteries of water and fire and the myriad existences had increased by a large amount. In the past 6 months in the Xia capital, I have been comprehending spear techniques, and my comprehension has also increased. But there was still no qualitative change. His profound mysteries of the realm of myriad creations was much more profound than when he killed Xiang Pangyun. But only a qualitative change could represent reaching the second level. Fortunately, the water of myriad creations is good at defense. Otherwise, the fourth round would have been dangerous. Dongbui Shuang had a look of anticipation in his eyes. Very good. The greater the pressure, the better it will be for me to hone my spear techniques. After becoming a transcendent for half a year, he had gained a lot of insights into spear techniques. Many of them needed to be tested in actual combat. Who? Dongbui Shuang raised his head and saw a figure descending from the sky, landing on the mountain rocks with a dull thud. This was a humanoid giant that was nearly 5 meters tall. His skin was dark red, and he had fangs. He held a huge shield in one hand and a terrifying giant axe in the other. His dark yellow eyes were filled with killing intent and hatred. These transcendent natives that were thrown in as opponents were filled with hatred towards humans and refused to bow their heads. Humans captured them and forced them to do hard work. Sometimes, they would even be chosen as opponents in the transcendent battle of life and death. If they lost, they would die. But if they won, they would regain their freedom. Freedom was what these natives desired the most. Since the Infernal Palace had made a promise, they would not go back on it. If they could take the opportunity to kill a new transcendent and regain their freedom, how great would that be? Even if they killed a new transcendent, the Infernal Palace would not take revenge. Because this was the rule of the transcendent battle of life and death. Seems like this transcendent native is rather good at fighting. Dongbua Shuang could sense that this transcendent native in front of him should be much stronger than the one he met in the third round. Boom! With a thought from Shuang, surging waves of water appeared, forming a huge maelstrom of water that filled the entire battleground. The undercurrents within the waves were unceasing. The giant native with a shield and a giant axe frowned. His lips curled into a disdainful smile as he charged towards Qin Wentian. Although the undercurrents were turbulent, the giant native was still able to control his strength with relative precision. He charged towards Qin Wentian, ignoring the turbulent whirlpool. He has reached the realm of power as one. Dongbua Shuang immediately deduced. The influence of the waves on him is rather small. Die, human! The giant native turned his body sideways. With his left hand holding onto the giant shield, he charged towards Qin Wentian with the full force of his body. The giant native with a height of nearly 5 meters had a similarly huge shield. It was as though a giant wall was charging towards Dongbua Shuang. If it was just a clash of weapons, he could still focus on techniques. But when it was just a shield, it would be much more troublesome to deal with. Dongbua Shuang did not have any good ideas. Let's use this to see if he's strong or weak. Dongbua Shuang immediately retreated. At the same time, his spear pierced out like a venomous snake, instantly colliding with the giant shield. Boom! A suppressive force was transmitted from the spear. Fortunately, the spear was merely a feint. The spear trembled as it deflected the force of the impact. Even so, it was still sent flying backwards. What a ferocious force! Dongbua Shuang was shocked. You won't be able to escape. As Dongbua Shuang was sent flying, the giant native chased after him. He swung his giant axe horizontally, as though it was about to split the heavens and earth apart. Dongbua Shuang's spear was like a stream of water. It was incomparably gentle. The moment it came into contact with the axe, a bizarre rotational force caused the axe to change its direction. Suppress! The giant native's shield swept over once more. A giant shield and a giant axe swept out consecutively. Dongbua Shuang was actually forced to defend. The main reason was because this giant native had rich combat experience. His techniques could be considered as a shield grandmaster and battle axe grandmaster. The combination of their techniques was extremely perfect. This native's strength is extremely strong. Even when using heavy weapons like shields and axes, he is still able to move so quickly and ferociously. Shuang was doing his best to defend while pondering, he's using an upright and straightforward method to suppress me. Even though my profound mystery of the water of myriad existences is soft and strange, it is useless in front of him. There were many different styles of combat. A strange and gentle spear art was useless in the face of a direct suppression. Clearly, the Infernal Palace did not allow for any flukes when choosing an opponent for a new transcendent. From the transcendent native who was proficient in speed in the third match to the shield grandmaster and battle axe grandmaster who was able to suppress the transcendent native head-on in the fifth match. It was a test of every aspect of a new transcendent. As long as one failed in one aspect, they would be defeated. That terrifying axe whizzed over. If they were to be struck by it, they would instantly lose their lives. If I continue to hold on with such difficulty, I will only be defeated in the end. I have to counterattack. At the moment when Dongbu Shuang was sent flying, he suddenly charged forward and raised his spear high. Bringing along boundless might, he slashed downwards. When he slashed downwards, flames appeared on the spear as though a meteorite was descending. The fire of myriad creations was ferocious and violent, directly suppressing. In terms of frontal attacks, it was much stronger than the profound mystery of the water of myriad creation spear art. It could not be considered as double, but it was not far from it. Furthermore, as one's cultivation realm increased, the difference between the different profound mysteries of the spear art would become greater. The fire of myriad creation spear art would become more and more ferocious, while the water of myriad creation spear art would become more and more unpredictable. Good. The huge native was agitated. He immediately brandished the axe in his hand and slashed forward. He wanted to crush the spear of the human in front of him and hack this human to death. Pang! A loud sound rang out. Dongbu Shuang was sent flying backwards. The huge native also felt the huge impact and his body trembled uncontrollably. He was unable to give chase immediately. Pooh! Dongbu Shuaying's mouth was filled with the taste of blood, but his eyes were filled with excitement. From the start of the transcendent battle of life and death until now, this was the only battle that gave him the same feeling as when he fought against Xiang Pangyun. That kind of pressure and nervousness when he was on the brink of death. Although the last strike of the severing wind 15 swords also made him feel the threat of death, it was only for a split second. The transcendent battle of life and death is getting more and more interesting. Dongbu Shuang was extremely excited. Only such battles could truly temper himself. The feeling of walking on the brink of death caused his entire body to tremble with excitement. The threat of death stimulated his instincts, allowing him to enter the most perfect state. Chapter 117. The waves surged. The huge native was like an unshakable reef. Furthermore, he was nearly 5 meters tall. How huge was his physique? Dongbu Shuaying's height wasn't even as tall as the huge native's thigh. The huge native casually swung his shield, but it was as though a wall was pressing down on him. A casual swing of his axe, it was extremely difficult to dodge. If the huge native was an agile type, Dongbu Shuang might have an advantage due to his small stature. However, this transcendent native was suppressing Dongbu Shuang head-on. He was displaying the advantage of his physique and strength. Dongbu Shuang is in trouble this time. I'm afraid he will lose in the 5th match. He relied on the peculiarity of the water of myriad existences and his defensive ability. However, it is completely useless against this straightforward suppression. He has no hope at all in this battle. I heard that he had awakened his primordial bloodline. Once his primordial bloodline is activated, he might be able to turn the tables. You guys shouldn't look down on him. Perhaps this Dongbu Shuang had a breakthrough in the midst of battle. That year, Qiu Qibai had a breakthrough in the midst of a life and death battle, reaching the 2nd level of the realms of myriad existences. After that, he won the 6th match. Some of the transcendents in the Eastern spectators straightened their backs. Some of them were also watching attentively. Snow Eagle. Old brother Snow Eagle. Qiu Qibai and the other transcendents from the Tranquil Sun province were also getting nervous. They could tell that without using his power of bloodline, it would be extremely difficult for Dongbu Shuang to win this match. Snow Eagle is still too young. His realm is still lacking. Peng Shan said. However, Dongbu Shuang wasn't anxious at all. Instead, he was fighting to his heart's content. His spear flew about. Sometimes, it was gentle and strange. Sometimes, it was ferocious and violent. Out of every 10 spear strikes, 6 or 7 of them were extremely ferocious. Most of them were even clashing head-on. Boom, boom, it's a fair and square suppression, and there seems to be no flaws. However, he is too ferocious. The most perfect battle technique should have both yin and yang, both hard and soft. Back then, Dongbu Shuang had first comprehended the fire of all creations. Later on, he felt that something was amiss, so he combined toughness and gentleness to comprehend the water of all creations. In his comprehension of the nature of the world, everything had its yin and yang sides. Crushing the opponent with pure brute force was very effective, but if he couldn't win in a short period of time, the opponent would have a chance to counterattack. He's strong and fierce. I, on the other hand, have both strength and gentleness. I definitely have a chance of defeating him. He seems to be flawless, so I'll create an opening in battle. Dongbo Shuang was different from other transcendents. There were two types of transcendent knights who cultivated. The first type was those who fought on the brink of life and death from the very beginning. They would temper themselves and gain insights from the brink of death, allowing their realms to constantly rise. One such example was Qiu Qibai. Qiu Qibai was extremely adept at battle. The more he fought, the stronger he became. He even comprehended the true meaning of void cleavage. The other type was more inclined towards self-cultivation. Even if they rarely fought on the brink of life and death, as long as they had a solid foundation, they would be able to gradually improve their realms. Dongbo Shuang belonged to the latter type. Before he became a transcendent, he had very few intense battles. Only the half a month in the mountain range of desolation, the battle with the god's emissary, and the battle with Xiang Pangyun could be considered as intense. Afterwards, at the bottom of the Black Wind Abyss, in the underground palace, for 6 years, he had also immersed himself in cultivation. At most, he would spar with 2 transcendent refiner organisms. He didn't have any life and death battles to temper himself. Perhaps, he had also inherited some of his mother's strengths. Dongbo Shuang loved to ponder, research, and summarize. It was the same during battles. When he was fighting with this huge native, Dongbo Shuang didn't panic at all. After a short exchange, he immediately understood his opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Then, based on his own strengths, he immediately came up with a plan. Boom boom boom, the clash between the two was incomparably ferocious. Under the eruption of the profound fire of creation, the huge native's arms were numb from the impact, and his body staggered. Under such collisions, Dongbo Shuang tried to find a flaw in the huge native's defense, hoping to kill him. However, it was clear that the huge native was also a shield master. He wouldn't give Dongbo Shuang the chance to do so. However, as long as one's strategy was right, as long as one was patient, the opportunity would eventually come. Boom! As Dongbo Shuaying's spear swept across, it collided with the shield. Under the intense collision, the spearhead in Dongbo Shuaying's hands was knocked backwards. However, Dongbo Shuaying had a plan in mind. As his spear streaked across the sky, it spun 180 degrees, causing the spearhead to be at the back and the spearhead to be at the front. Xiao! The spear in his hand pierced out. The spearhead pierced out with the spearhead. The spearhead also spun in a shocking arc, bringing with it an intense and bizarre force. Water flowed around it. Ah! The huge native was too careless. After all, it was rare to see the spearhead piercing out. Although the spearhead was not sharp, this piercing was similar to the piercing of a rod, and the might behind it was equally shocking. Unable to block in time with his shield, he could only swing his huge axe to block. Pooh! The spearhead collided with the axe. The spearhead was smooth and did not have a sharp edge. The spinning force was even more bizarre, to the point that it could even form an arc that was visible to the naked eye. With just a touch and a spin, the spearhead pierced through the huge axe. Pooh! The rod nodded. The spearhead pierced through the throat of the huge native. The bizarre penetrative force instantly pierced through his throat. Boom! The thick spearhead continued to spin as it pierced through the huge native's throat, creating a huge hole the size of a bowl. The neck of the huge native was extremely thick. If the wound was small, with his vitality, he wouldn't die at all. Kill! The huge native's neck was pierced through, but he still widened his eyes and waved his shield. Dongbo Shuang hurriedly retreated. So. He rapidly increased the distance between them. The huge native stood there with his eyes wide open. Following which, He grabbed his neck with one hand, but it was useless. The hole was too big. Even his powerful vitality was unable to save him. He stood there for a full 2 breaths of time before collapsing. Hua! Immediately, some of the spectating transcendents stood up. All of them looked in astonishment at the huge native who had fallen to the ground. He won. The way Dongbua Shuaying won caused many of the transcendents to be shocked. This Dongbua Shuaying's spear technique is a fusion of fire and water when he fights in close combat, combining strength and gentleness. When he is gentleness, his defense is perfect without any flaws. When he is fierce, he is also incomparably ferocious. Furthermore, when the fierce spear technique changes into the gentle spear technique, it is incomparably natural. That bumpkin clearly had no openings, but after so many head-on collisions, he created openings. Amazing! Many of the transcendents sighed in admiration. Transcendents who walked the extreme path were powerful, but their flaws were also very obvious. Transcendents like Dongbua Shuang, who had both offense and defense, combining strength and gentleness, were the hardest to deal with. But in reality, very few transcendents would choose this path, because their energy was limited. Walking the extreme path would allow them to easily become stronger. To be perfect in many aspects, the energy required was too much. Dong! Following the sound of the drum in the Hall of Life and Death, not only were the countless mortals excited, even the spectating transcendents stood up. Those that did not stand up also sat up to watch carefully. Probably only Cloud Fog City's City Lady Boo, the #1 killing god, Old Granny Yi, and a few others could still casually watch. The 6th match was about to begin. The 6th match, when Qiu Qibai reached the 2nd level of Realms of Myriad Existences, he only won 6 matches. The 6th match. Dongbua Shuang took a deep breath. This crucial match would definitely be much harder than the previous one. Hua! A figure descended from the sky. It was a 2-meter-tall man with long green hair. His body was sturdy, his face was like a sculpture, and his hair was lush. Just by standing there, he emitted an indescribable aura. Chapter 118. The moment he landed on the ground, a majestic wave of water immediately condensed in the battleground, transforming into a huge whirlpool that coiled around the green-haired man. Water? Playing with water with me? The green-haired man sneered. At the same time, with his body as the center, a terrifying chill instantly spread out in all directions. The originally turbulent waves were all frozen with crackling sounds, and the huge whirlpool of water was still in the shape of a whirlpool even after it was frozen. The temperature in the battle arena also plummeted. So cold. Dongbua Shuang could feel the bone-piercing chill, and his body started to freeze. With a thought, Dongbua Shuaying's transcendent Do Qi started to flow rapidly, shattering the ice on his body. However, the surrounding chill started to condense again. Dongbua Shuang could only rely on his transcendent Do Qi to dispel and shatter the ice. If he were to stop, he would probably be frozen into an ice sculpture. Dongbua Shuang tried to use the power of the fire in the world, but as the chill spread out, the power of the fire was expelled the moment he tried to use it. So cold. I have transcendent Do Qi to protect my body. My body has also become strong due to the awakening of my primordial bloodline, but I can still feel the bone-piercing chill. Dongbua Shuang was shocked. This chill would probably freeze an ordinary legend knight to death. Ordinary newly advanced transcendents with weak bodies would also shiver in fear. He had just broken through to the mid-phase Sky Realm, which was why his 6th opponent was so powerful. Other than the bone-piercing chill, the boundless chill also produced a powerful binding force, as though 100,000 gene of weight was pressing down on his body. Chill, suppression, he was afraid that he could only display 60 to 70% of his strength. This green-haired man in front of him was indeed worthy of being classified as a mid-transcendent native. Human, come. Let me see how many tricks you have up your sleeves. The green-haired man sneered. A layer of silvery white ice covered his body, making him look like a man of ice. Humph, the transcendent qi on the surface of Shui Ying's body was constantly circulating, shattering the frost. At the same time, he turned into an afterimage as he flew across the waves of frost. Within moments, he arrived in front of the green-haired male. Who? The long spear transformed into countless spear shadows, strange and unpredictable. The green-haired man was wearing a pair of silver gloves, and he tried to grab hold of Dongbo Shui Ying's spear. However, when his fingers touched the spear, he felt that it was slippery, and it was hard for him to grab hold of it. The tip of the spear spun and pierced into his body. Chi chi chi, the black spear pierced into the green-haired man's body, chest, and throat. However, it only left a white spot on the layer of ice on the green-haired man's body. Furthermore, the protective layer of ice on the green-haired man's body was still glowing. Even if it was a white spot, it would instantly recover. What a strange spear technique. I couldn't even catch it. That gave me a fright. I was wondering how powerful it would be, said the green-haired man with a smile. Humph. Dongbo Shui Ying's spear technique changed, becoming incomparably ferocious. His spear technique was imbued with flames, causing its might to skyrocket. Bang bang bang, the green-haired man easily blocked the spear with his palms. The protective layer of ice on his palms cracked and shattered, but the silver-white gloves on his palms were indestructible and easily blocked the spear. Furthermore, he was rapidly closing in, intending to engage in close combat. Dongbo Shui Ying immediately retreated. Damn it! Dongbo Shui Ying's expression changed. This transcendent aboriginal has also reached the realm of myriad existences. After reaching the realm of myriad existences, this transcendent aboriginal's battle techniques had also become formidable. What about him? If he were to rely on the profound mysteries of the water of myriad existences, he would be able to pierce through the opponent's body, but he wouldn't even be able to break through the protective layer of ice. If he were to rely on the fire of myriad existences, he would be able to break through the protective layer of ice. However, because it was too direct, the opponent could easily defend against it. Both of them had their pros and cons unless he executed the water and fire WYRM attack. This was a technique that he created after combining the profound mysteries of the water and fire of myriad existences. He took the advantages of the profound mysteries of water and fire, and combined them together to increase his might. It was just that this move was his final trump card. This transcendent battle of life and death was a rare and safe opportunity to train himself. He had to grab hold of every opportunity. Only at the very end would he be willing to use the water and fire WYRM attack. Now that he was using his normal techniques, he could train his profound mysteries of water and fire. As his profound mysteries of water and fire increased, the might of the water and fire WYRM attack would increase as well. Ha ha ha, human, you've lost for sure. The green-haired man closed in crazily. Under the pressure of the boundless cold qi, Dongbo Shui Ying's speed was greatly reduced, and he was unable to escape. He could only rely on his spear to defend. The green-haired man tried to close in on him again and again. Dongbo Shui Ying used the sweeping, piercing, crushing, tangling, blocking and other spear techniques of his. He used the profound mysteries of water and fire alternately as he tried his best to hold on. However, everyone could see that Dongbo Shui Ying was at an absolute disadvantage. He couldn't threaten the green-haired transcendent aboriginal at all, and was completely suppressed. At the corner of the east viewing area, the hunchbacked old granny revealed a smile. I knew it. This kid is so young, it would be amazing if he could win 6 matches. Beauty Yi, you previously said that this kid wouldn't be able to win 6 matches. The bald, skinny old man, Chao Qing, said proudly, although Dongbo Shui Ying is at a disadvantage, his primordial bloodline hasn't been activated yet. Once it is activated, I believe that winning the 6th match won't be a problem. Humph, he's relying on the primordial bloodline. Without it, he wouldn't be able to win 6 matches. Old Granny Yi harumphed coldly. Chao Qing laughed until his mouth became crooked. He. Beauty, don't forget that we were betting on whether Dongbo Shui Ying would be able to win 6 matches. You said that he wouldn't be able to win, so I said that he would win. Who cares if he's relying on the primordial bloodline or not, as long as he wins the 6th match, I'll win this bet. Your 50,000 kilograms of origin stones will belong to me. So be it. Old man, you're about to die, what's the use of 50,000 kilograms of origin stones? Old Granny Yi said unhappily. Even demigods wouldn't bet so much. Only these two old fellows who were nearing the end of their lifespans, and treasures didn't have much meaning to them, would casually bet so much. After all, once they died, their treasures would be left to their descendants. Of course it's useful. Can't you give it to my Water Daoist faction's genius disciple? For example, give it to this Dongbu Shuang. TSK, this is the 100,000 origin stones that I won from the Bloodshed Tavern's #1 killing goddess, Beauty Yi. I'll be happy even if I give it to a junior. Chao Qing said proudly. Humph, count yourself lucky. I calculated wrongly, that's all. Old Granny Yi looked down. This Dongbu Shuang kid's primordial bloodline is only able to activate his strength. It's a very ordinary type and won't be of much help in a transcendent battle of life and death. He'll probably only win 1 or 2 more matches. I thought that this kid had just stepped into the transcendent realm and was very young, so he should only be at the first level of the realms of myriad existences. I didn't expect him to be able to combine the 2 profound mysteries of water and fire so well, allowing him to fight his way to the 6th match. Old Granny Ye's eyes were sharp. Her original calculations were not wrong. However, Dongbu Shuiying's profound mysteries of water and fire had increased. Although it was still at the first level of the realms of myriad existences, it could be considered to be at a relatively high level. Furthermore, the 2 profound mysteries complemented each other very well. Only then could he fight his way to the 6th match without relying on his strength to activate his strength. A loss is a loss. Chao Qing teased. I was careless and didn't see clearly. Old Granny Yi still wanted to explain. A loss is a loss. Old man Chao Qing continued to attack. You shut up. Old Granny Yi glared. A loss is a loss. Chao Qing smiled crookedly, incomparably proud. You rotten old man, do you still dare to bet? Old Granny Yi gritted her teeth. Chao Qing was startled. I bet that this kid won't win the 8th match. At most he'll stop at the 7th match. Old Granny Yi stared at him. Do you dare to bet? It's still 100,000 origin stones. Chao Qing fell silent. According to his calculations, in order to win the 6th match, Dongbu Shuang would probably have to activate his strength. Even winning the 7th match would be a bit difficult. There was practically no hope for the 8th match. But, after living for so long, one was about to die. Sometimes, being willful was just being willful. I'll bet. Chao Qing said. You really dare to bet? Old Granny Yi was shocked. I won 100,000 origin stones from you before. At worst, I'll just return it to you. Chao Qing laughed. You're really willful. Old Granny Yi smiled, her smile like a flower. More origin stones, willful. Chao Qing said proudly. Mountain Lord He, faction head Si Kong Yang, and City Lord Bu were the true hegemons of the human side. The 3 of them were relatively calm. City Lord Bu was still lying down, casually looking down and drinking wine. She casually said, not bad, it's already the 6th match. But it seems like, he'll have to rely on his archaic bloodline to win the 6th match. At most, he'll only be able to win the 7th match. He'll definitely lose the 8th match. City Lord Bu is right. Mountain Lord He and faction head Si Kong Yang both laughed in agreement.